Hello.
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 Hello. We got out of sync
Hello.
there a little, I think.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, I can hear you.
Hello.
Edgar.
Hello.
Edgar.
Hello.
Are you being an Aegis?
Hello. So it's been a month, roughly over a month since our last podcast.
About that?
And our last podcast was the Star Wars special.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, any follow-up for Star Wars?
I haven't seen it again since.
Okay.
I have read like a few articles and stuff on it about how similar it is to A New Hope. And I guess this is a slightly spoilery section then.
Yeah, spoilers, go for it.
So as we said before, a lot of similarities to the first film, Episode 4, A New Hope. I mean, I think I'm coming down on the fence that I do enjoy it as a film.
Okay.
I do like it.
So your opinions are largely unchanged?
Yeah, I do enjoy it. And I've been thinking about who my favorite character is and stuff.
Okay.
It's Kylo.
He's your favorite character?
Yep.
He was a popular one in the subreddit as well. Why do you like him?
A couple of reasons. He's a bad guy who isn't a total badass. He's a bad guy with very obvious weaknesses and humanities.
Right, okay.
Which I think is interesting. That, you know, he wants to be Vader. He desperately wants to be Vader, but he isn't. And,
right.
You know, he's got weaknesses. And it's also partially that his weaknesses are kind of what make him evil. That, in a lot of ways, he's a sort of very stereotypical kind of nerd. And it's important to have that kind of thing called out and show that, you know, just because you're a nerd and things go badly for you doesn't make you in the right. It's still possible to be a bad guy even if you're a nerd. I think it kind of in a way can call out some of the sort of toxic elements in how nerd communities act and are constructed.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
And he chose evil, which I think is very interesting. Like it wasn't predestined for him. It wasn't something he could never escape. He actually chose it, which I think is quite interesting as well.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, that's a very valid point. Yeah.
Because I mean, I suppose you could say in some ways that Anakin chose evil, but I mean, it was
the loss of his mother.
It was a lot of like circumstances that caused him to become it.
Yeah, he may have chosen, but like his hands were tied towards the end.
Yeah, he was very much pushed towards it by circumstance, and he was manipulated by Palpatine. But Kylo Ren got everything. Like he was totally supported, and he had a chance at redemption, and he rejected it.
A good analogy for like our generation then.
How so?
Yeah, just like he strikes me as like, because of the being supported and all that, he strikes me like the tortured soul kind of character you get a lot from our generation. No?
I don't see it.
As in like he was given everything he needed when he grew up and he was supported and he was loved, yet he lashes out still and seeks out bad things as a kind of response to how lovely his life was beforehand, if you know what I mean. And it's happened.
Well,
I think this happens a lot with people in our generation, just because of the circumstances. Generally, now this is obviously changed from person to person, but the sort of like economic circumstances we grew up in, like we grew up in quite comfortable economic circumstances, and yet we seek to rebel and lash out and all of this when really our lives aren't that bad relative to other generations.
I would disagree with that.
Okay, on what grounds?
Okay, so things were going great for, say, the first 20 years or so of our lives, but our futures are extremely dismal, economically speaking. And that has actually all been taken from us by generations that went before.
Okay, yeah.
We're viewed as like freeloaders and needy and demanding, when if you compare the economic situations, things are vastly orders of magnitude more difficult for us.
Okay. I take that point, actually. I hadn't considered the future. I had just been considering the past. That's a good point. That's a good point.
I don't see how I'll ever be able to afford a house, whereas someone who had my job 30 years ago could have had a house.
Yeah, oh no, this is getting off the point of Star Wars. But
but you're talking about like economically and stuff. You brought up economics, Edgar.
No, my next point is going to take us away from Star Wars, but I just want to go over it for a second. Does this bother you?
I mean, I'm not particularly interested in house ownership myself, but kind of on principle, yeah.
Right, okay, yeah, because
and that it's kind of turned around that people of our generation are needy, or people of our generation had everything handed to us, when that's just not the case.
Yeah.
We worked for it in our day and age. Yeah, but like we have to work way harder to get way less.
Yeah, there's subtleties here, but just purely from experience, a lot of people I've met that I think fit the paradigm I proposed there, that they are kind of needy or had everything handed to them. Like, I had a lot of stuff handed to me. Now, I work hard and stuff, and try and be good and moral and productive.
Yeah, totally.
But like, there's like, at no point can I say that I struggled in life, or that the family struggled in life. And if there was something that I like, if I wanted a guitar or something, that could be arranged for me. It might have to be like, I might have to sacrifice a Christmas present and birthday present for that guitar to show up. But
yeah,
but it happened. So I take your point fully. I still think there's a nugget of truth that holds to what I said. And of course, people are different situations. I'm sure someone of my age who's living in, I don't know, the Far East has a different sort of thing, and someone of my age living in North America has a different thing. You don't know. But I got that. Sorry, go on.
After you.
Well, I got that impression from Kylo Ren the first time around. I was kind of like, he like, there's elements of him that are very Edgar, like a kind of the potential to be very spoilt, like a bit arrogant, prone to temper tantrums when things doesn't get his way, and this sort of thing I see a lot in people my age,
Right. I think also the thing we have to acknowledge when talking about this, though, is that we have a very specific viewpoint of being people who are able to go to get a third level education.
Yeah, of course,
which isn't everyone, and I mean we're able to afford to do it in music of all subjects.
Oh man, sorry, I this isn't Star Wars, but I just want to put this out to the internet just to share my woes. So I am looking at going back to college, right?
Yeah.
And studying, ideally, the course I've kind of set my goals towards is physics and astrophysics.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because I've already been to college, the way it works in Ireland is that you get one free college session. And if you want to go back, like do a postgrad or do another undergraduate, you have to pay full whack.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been looking at the finances and like, oh man, it's so incredibly mind-blowing how much money education costs. And how lucky we are that we can have one bout of studies like essentially free.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just crazy, and this is like, again, speaking to the kind of spoiled sort of generation of ours, that is something I didn't even acknowledge. I was just kind of like, yeah, everyone goes to college, yeah, like it costs a registration fee every year, but it's no big deal, it's standard. And then when you have to do it out of your own means, you realize, my God, it's actually such an exceptional thing to be able to go to college without ever having to worry about it,
Yeah, it's that's one big element taken care of, all right.
Yeah, definitely. Anyhow, sorry, back to Star Wars. Digressions already. So we like Kylo Ren. Yeah. Anything? Did you read any interesting critiques?
No, mostly stuff just comparing it to the first film. I haven't come across any of the sort of critical reception stuff I was talking about in the last episode yet.
Okay.
The last episode of the podcast.
Yeah, so I watched it again.
Mm-hmm.
I brought the captain along to watch it, and it was interesting the second time around because I wasn't watching it with such a critical eye. It was a lot easier to swallow all the similarities.
Right.
Yeah, like there was a point halfway through the film I was like, oh, but the first time I watched this I was getting mildly annoyed because I'd already seen like 100 references or whatever to A New Hope. But the second time around, it was very strange. It didn't happen, and I felt myself just sitting back, relaxing and watching a film, which I did not expect at all. And I think my point still holds. If you haven't seen A New Hope, this Star Wars is unreal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's incredible. Like, and it's so much better than A New Hope. And everything about this movie is awesome. But I've been really trying to like nail down my position, and I can't like reconcile the fact that like the narrative isn't something new and hasn't really added a whole lot to it, and that's a huge like minus point. Like there's so many plus points, but that's one point that you gotta get right. Like story, it's at the heart of every sort of communicative medium, you know. I got a BB-8 toy.
Excellent.
Yes, hold on. Wait 1 second. Let me get him for you. Wait.
I can't.
We can give him a play for the listeners, Bill. Okay. Pick a mode, number 1 or number 2?
2.
Well done. Did you hear him?
Oh, I do. That's excellent.
He's class. It was really funny. I went into the Disney store in Dublin.
Yeah.
And just give me a second here. Sorry, I just need to put him back in his designated position. So I was thinking for the outro cards on my videos, I was thinking about setting up a little table and having various little like toys on the table. So like the wobble heads and a BB-8 and a Rubik's Cube and maybe some of my favorite world building books, just to like make a little kind of prop thing. And this hit me as I walked by the Disney store, and I was like, oh, let's buy a BB-8. So I went in, and I gotta say this, I realized no one from the Disney store is watching, but they're just the friendliest people. I was blown away at the level of customer care and attention and how nice they are. Like, it was incredible. There was like, some guys were asking about lightsaber combat. Mm-hmm. Because they were selling lightsabers. And one of the clerks was clearly like a massive nerd. And he goes out of his way to discuss lightsaber combat with them. And they have an engaging little conversation and discuss the various different techniques. And like this was incredible. And then I dealt with the same guy at the counter, and he asked me about, because I told him I was buying props for my YouTube channel. And like, he gave me a high five for doing YouTube, and he was like, "That's awesome, man." And then we had a little discussion, and it was incredibly friendly. I could not believe how lovely that is. The only thing that stopped me from ever going back to Disney store is the outrageous prices. But other than that, it's like, it was great. So I got my little BB-8. He's the first toy in my little prop collection. So you should be seeing him on video soon.
Will it be a thing where there's going to be a slow rotation of them and you're going to have new ones? Or will it be a growing collection that's just going to be the same things and then you add more to it?
I think in a year or two time, I might just be swamped in toys.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm going to do. I don't know. I will see how it goes. I'm definitely think I'm going to have like a core set. Like something from my favorite things. So there will be a Star Wars thing. There will be a Star Trek thing. If I can get something Skyrim related, that will probably always be there. Maybe a Minecraft thing, because I really like those things. And then outside of that, sure, whatever happens. So yeah, so that's that. Now, one last thing on Star Wars, Bill, if it's okay with you.
Sure.
I want to get into reading and experiencing the expanded universe stuff.
Yeah.
Right, and I was just wondering, I realised that probably you're not the best person to ask, but, you know, kind of you're the only one here. So I was wondering, how does one get into EU? Like, what is the extended universe or the expanded universe?
So, are you asking like what is still canon, or do you like mind like the stuff that isn't canon anymore? Is that still of interest to you?
Yeah. So for the listeners, this bit I do know is that because of the new film, it has retconned an awful lot of what was already canon. Isn't that the thing? And they had to throw out a whole load of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't bother me at all, really. I suppose, what is canon? Like, what makes a thing canon? Does it have to be officially licensed by Lucasfilm?
Well, all of the old stuff had been canon, and that's all now in a new continuity called Star Wars Legends, I think.
Oh,
of the novels and stuff.
Right, okay.
All of the novels set after Return of the Jedi are no longer canon, and they're in the expanded universe, the Star Wars Legends continuity. Some stuff that was earlier may also be in Legends, I'm not sure. I think the cartoons are still canon. And apparently they're brilliant.
Oh, right, really?
There's two series of Clone Wars cartoons. Like, one was about 10 years ago, maybe a bit more, and it was done in kind of the style of Samurai Jack. I think it was the same animation studio.
Oh, okay.
You like Samurai Jack, don't you?
I know of him. I haven't really watched stuff.
Oh, okay. And then there's another one more recent, which was 3D animated, which is also apparently really good.
Okay.
And it's just like, it takes place during the Clone Wars, and and is Anakin and Mace Windu and Obi-Wan Kenobi being badasses.
And what made the novels canon before they became uncanon? Like what makes a thing canon? If I write a book, does that mean it will be canon?
No.
No. So what makes it canon? Does it have to be licensed by Lucasfilm?
I guess so. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So essentially, if you want to get into if you want to know the canon stuff, you just need to look up everything that's been produced officially by Lucasfilm or Disney, and watch or read or listen to it.
I suppose, yeah.
Okay.
Or you could just read it all in Wikipedia.
Oh, you could do that, yeah. But
yeah,
it's nice to read.
I'm quite fond. I'm not a. This is weird. I'm not a big Star Wars fan, really, but I do quite enjoy reading Wikipedia.
Yeah, I would still like to read a book. It's nice, yes, to get a brief synopsis of what's going on in the universe, but it's nice to have a bit of narrative as well. Because this is the thing I might get into. I might start reading some Star Wars books because it would be interesting. Because the lightsaber combat the last time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that because I had to go. The people left links about the various different types of lightsaber combat and the whole thing where you said about turning the blade on and off.
Yeah.
That got me reading an awful lot, and I realized some of it's just amazing. I was like, I gotta get into this. So this is the thing, New Year's resolution. The thing I'm gonna do. I'm gonna read some Star Wars.
Cool.
All right.
I didn't make any New Year's resolutions, but I think I might learn to juggle.
Oh, I can juggle.
You can juggle?
I can, yeah. Yeah. Why do you want to learn how to juggle?
As a compositional impulse. I'm interested in it from a rhythmic point of view.
Oh, here, as a compositional thing as well, there's juggler notation, which is kind of cool.
Is there?
Yeah, there's notations to the various different, cycles, I suppose, for throwing the balls around the air. So there's an actual, written script to it.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, I think that's something you'd be interested in. I've never seen it before, because I learned kind of, naturally. A guy just showed me. So yeah. Can I give you a word of advice for juggling?
Yes.
Can you juggle anything at all?
I kind of, about 10 years ago, I did it as part of a summer course thing, and it was making a point about learning skills, and I was like, oh, that's cool, and I was okay. I was just about to be able to do 3 comfortably, but then I just never practiced when I came home. So.
Okay, all right. My 2 tips I was given by a juggling friend of mine was, 1, when you're learning, make no attempt to catch the balls.
Okay.
All right, so you're throwing the balls around, and what you want to do is you want to just let them fall on the floor, and they should fall in a very distinct pattern.
Right.
Right. So you're learning the pattern of how the balls are going. So you're not wasting brain energy trying to grab all these things in the air. You just throw them around, let them drop, and go. Was there 3 on one side and 2 on the other side? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's one. And then the other thing I found hugely useful was to practice in front of a wall.
Yes, I've heard that.
Yeah, because I don't know what it is. If there's any jugglers listening, please tell me. But there's something about juggling that the balls keep going forward. It's very strange. And even if you purposely decide to throw a little bit backwards, they all just seem to have this momentum forward. So those 2 things help me out an awful lot, and I can do 5 at a stretch.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, at a big stretch, and they need to be particularly small balls, otherwise I'm not going to be able to do it. And I only know 2 patterns of juggling. There's the conventional one, and there's this overhand one. So I'm by no means a good juggler, but I understand the mechanisms.
Cool.
Will you have some juggling follow up for the next show? Will you let us know Bill's progress in juggling land?
I don't know if I will or not.
That sounded very political. Very kind of don't answer the question. But I wish you well on your juggling adventure.
Thank you.
All right. So you mentioned compositional impulse there. You've been doing some writing recently.
I have, yes.
Do you want to talk about this?
In the last episode of the podcast, Jafiki and Diwan was asking us what it would be like for a culture to have tetratonic or pentatonic music. So we spoke at length about music world building.
Yes.
And I said that I don't really world build music because I would get too wrapped up in it. But I have written a guide, a few pages on how you can approach music world building. I'm going to write at least 2 articles, maybe a third, The first one is on my WordPress.
Links in the show notes.
Cheers. And it's about how to build musical cultures. So it's not dealing with the music itself so much as the society it's in, and how to consider different aspects of what constitutes the kind of the cultural musicology, and how that's made up, and how a writer or a world builder can think about those things in a way that maybe will break them free of just recreating things we already know.
Yeah, definitely. This is the piece that you posted on my various platforms, yeah?
I did, yes. Yeah. I put it up in the subreddit, and I've posted it to Artifexian, and
now this will be in the show notes, guys. And if you've seen it on Artifexian, great. But if you haven't, I'd advise you to go check it out. I'm sure Bill is going to find this very embarrassing, right? But I found his piece brilliant, right? It was so good. There's a really, at least in my eyes, it was a really unique way of doing it, because it was like there's very instructional text, and then interspersed throughout the instructional text was these like passages of the instructions in context, and it made for great reading. Like if it was just, I could not believe how well that was written, and I really am a big fan of that writing style, Bill, and I might even try and steal it.
Work away.
I joke, but I couldn't believe how well that worked though. Like you had a small instructional piece, talked about various things, and then you have an application of it, and then back to the instruction and back to the application, and it was a very dynamic way of writing. I really enjoyed it.
Cheers, dude.
So I look forward to number 2 and number 3. What's number 2 and 3 going to be about?
So the next one, my plan is to write a bit about music theory, but from a sort of physical, like the physics point of view, why harmony exists, the biological and physical bases for harmony, and how notes are like why we choose certain frequencies.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit about instruments, about kind of organology and that kind of thing. How instruments are made, like what's going on, and then maybe some of the cultural things around creating instruments, like how pretty much every culture ever has had bagpipes.
Oh, have they?
I mean, yeah. If you can like get access to a pipe and some kind of bladder, then you're probably like there's somewhere at least nearby that has bagpipes all over. Actually, I'm not so sure about sub-Saharan Africa. I can't think of any like off the top of my head. There may well be. I just can't think of any examples from like Bantu groups or anything. And I don't know if the San have them, but all over North America and Europe and Asia, everyone's had bagpipes.
That strikes me as being one step too complicated. I would have always assumed that it was just everyone has flutes.
Yeah, no, well, that's everyone does have flutes.
Oh, right, okay.
Flutes are probably the first. Flutes and percussion are probably the first.
Okay. Oh, cool. Oh, that's interesting. And so that's the physics of music then for that one. And what's the third one about? Or do you want to keep it secret?
I don't want to say too much about it in case I don't do it.
Well, you realise though, Bill, if you say it online, like announce it, that means it places the like burden upon you to make the thing, and that can often be very healthy.
That's true, but the burden is there anyway because I have already mentioned the existence of it. So at least this way I've got wiggle room with what it's about.
That's a good point. So we will keep you apprised, listeners, as to when these articles go up. I'm sure you'll see them on various Artifexian platforms, and of course Bill's WordPress. And I'll link profusely to these things because I really do think they're great.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Now I'll talk about this more in depth in the green room, but I had a very existential crisis last month.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just things weren't working out in terms of being creative and writing and things like that. And a few things happened that like compounded these things, and one of them was reading your article.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's totally fine. No, it's you know this happens sometimes. So I had spoken to a person who was very, very interesting and intellectual, and that made me feel like, oh God, look at the crap I produce. This is ridiculous compared to how these people speak and things like that. And then, like, literally 24 hours later, Bill drops an article on my doorstep, which is beautifully crafted. And I'm there struggling with my, like, kind of, like, YA-style dialogue or YA-style narrative on my channels. And it was just, it was hilarious. But yeah, anyhow, so, yeah, links in the show notes to all that. And I really do strongly encourage people to check it out.
Cool.
Is there anything fun in the emails there, Bill?
There's a few things, but I think the most important one that I want to bring up, we can come back to the others another time, is an email from Johannes Stormvika.
Okay.
And he just wants to say that he agrees with Bill about the bear flag. It's amazing and the coolest flag ever. This is the Železnogorsk flag that Edgar and I had a heated disagreement on last episode.
Oh, man, I don't know what it is. I think
it's atomic bear science.
It's atomic bear science. I think I just don't know what's good, because I mean, like, I got heavily criticized for Star Wars, for not liking Star Wars. Heavily criticized for not liking Die Hard. Heavily criticized for not liking The Fly. And now apparently the atomic bear science flag is good vexillology. I just think I don't have taste, Bill.
It's possible.
It's possible. And with the more people that write in and go, geez, Edgar, you're totally wrong, the more I'm beginning to believe that, in fact, I could just be tasteless.
I mean, the signs are all there.
They are. It's worrying. The first step to getting better is admitting you have a problem. Alright, so listen, while we're speaking flag, should we do flag corner?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So we got a lot of emails about the New Zealand flag referendum.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to talk about the New Zealand flag referendum particularly, because it's being discussed at length on other podcasts.
Right.
So people were asking my opinion on this, and our opinion on this. TLDR, I think that it's a really interesting voting system they're employing. It's a very interesting time for vexillology. I think that the flag they chose to go up against their state flag is rubbish, and they just overthought the thing, and they should have just had a silver fern on a black background. So that's my summation of the entire New Zealand flag referendum. Have you got any opinions on it?
I'm not particularly fond of any of the designs.
Of any of the designs at all? Any of them?
Of any of the final five.
Okay, alright. Again, so are you...
five Cylons.
Wait, hold on, you broke up there. Did you say of any of the final five Xylons?
Maybe.
So are you with me on the fact that it should have just been a silver fern on a black background?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think they've massively overtaught it. Anyhow, I don't want to get into that because, again, it's been discussed at length on other podcasts, and we really want to try and have a different take on things here on the Artifexian podcast. So, what I decided to do was go through and find what I believe to be the worst contenders for the New Zealand flag.
Mm-hmm.
So because they opened up the design process.
I'll probably love all of these now.
I'm sure you will. They opened up the design process to everyone, like anyone and everyone. So obviously you had great designs come forward, and obviously you would also have terrible designs. And all the designs are still listed on the official website of the New Zealand government.
Excellent.
All of them. Even the crappy ones, right? So I was poring over this last night, and I think I've come up with a top 5.
Okay.
Alright. So do you want to go through these?
Sure.
Okay, so don't click on anything yet, Bill. Alright.
Okay, I've opened them all in tabs. I haven't looked at the tabs yet.
Alright, okay, don't look at them yet. I'm going to read you the description, and then I want you to open up the tab.
Okay.
Okay, because very often the description and the flag don't match up. Okay. So, first one is on your tab there, you should see Land of the Long White Sheep Cloud.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So let me read the description. The long white cloud represents our country's identity, what makes New Zealand special. The sheep's legs symbolize our endless pursuit to grow as a nation, as we refine New Zealand into a place that we and the next generations can be proud to be part of.
Okay.
Open up the flag there.
Oh, Jesus God.
Isn't it awful?
Okay. Well, that's a joke, though.
No, obviously, these are obviously what people dropped in as jokes. Like, I'm not going to choose serious ones. These are, like, how insane people are going to get. For for the listeners, myself and Bill would probably take turns at describing this. I'll start off. What we have is we have a blue background and a Southern Cross, exactly the same way as the New Zealand flag is at the moment. But replacing the Union Jack and strung across from the left-hand side going into the right is an elongated sheep cloud thing, right? And it has little bitty legs, and it's way longer than a sheep should be. And this is apparently used to show the growth and development of the nation, which I think is hilarious. Great flag.
And I also like that the one end of the sheep is actually, I suppose it'd be the back end, judging by the legs, but it's not really very clear. It actually goes off the edge of the flag.
Yeah.
So it's like the sheep has kind of wandered onto the flag by accident.
Yeah, although the front legs, like the legs on the right hand side, they look to be front legs because of their orientation, but there's no head there.
There's no head, no.
No.
Because it's a sheep cloud. It's not a sheep. It's a sheep
oh, yeah, sorry. Obviously, yeah, the famous sheep cloud.
I'm pretty sure Land of the Long White Cloud is a name for New Zealand.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, like, so it's obvious this is, like, silly nonsense, but it's silly nonsense with a basis in something. So,
that's one case of the cloud being a thing. And then also, I'm sure we're all aware that New Zealand is sort of stereotyped as having a lot of sheep.
Yes.
And there's another little dig in there. I bet you this was, I don't know where the Bay of Plenty is, because this comes from a person from the Bay of Plenty. But like, I can almost assure people that it's probably going to be someone in Australia messing with the New Zealanders.
No, it's in the North Island.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's the north. Looks like it's the north tip of the North Island.
Okay, because
not the north tip, but an area in the north.
Okay, because I think that a lot of Australians really like had a great time. There's a lot of banter going on between the two countries about this, which I thought was like, and it was really like good spirited banter, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It was very good. So that is number 5. These aren't really in any particular order. I must stress.
I'm going to say this is obviously a very, very silly flag. It's quite a clever joke.
Yeah, no.
It is quite a clever joke.
These flags are a selection of what I thought was hilarious, witty, and just terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they're not all just going to be like silly little jokes. There was some that were, like, there was one that was a brown background, and someone had in paint drawn a cat scraping a litter tray. And it was called like deranged cat rakes back garden or something like that. And it had no relevance to anything. It was hilarious. Okay, so the next one, you're actually going to need to fill me in on this because I think the next one is kind of birthed of the internet, and I'm not actually sure I get the joke. I just think the design is hilarious. So the next one you should see on your tab is Nyan Kiwi. Okay, now I'm gonna have you. Did you open it?
Yeah.
Are you? You're meant to read the thing first. That's okay.
I'm sorry.
That's right. So can you explain? Do you want to describe the flag there first?
This flag combines the Southern Cross and colour scheme of our existing flag with the rainbow design of the popular Nyan cat meme. The design uses the Nyan Kiwi. The kiwi's colour represents our mixed-race society, and its trail represents the colourful variety of cultures present in New Zealand society. That's a badly written blurb. The Nyan theme music could also be used as a fresh and simpler national anthem. Wow.
Isn't that hilarious?
Wow.
So I don't know what the Nyan theme is. I have no idea what this is, but I know the.
You don't know Nyan Cat?
No, but I know the rainbow thing is something of the internet. I always thought the rainbow thing was unicorns.
So Nyan Cat is, I think it was originally a flash animation loop of, I guess it's a cat whose body is like a Pop-Tart or something.
What?
I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Hold on, let me just get an image up here, and it like is flying through space, leaving a rainbow trail, and there's kind of like this sort of chirpy music in the background, and it's really rather entertaining. Yeah, that looks a lot like a Pop-Tart to me.
Okay, alright.
Yeah. And it's like a cute little cat, and there's like sort of stars in the background.
Is this of the old internet?
No, the last 5 years, I'd say.
Okay, alright. Somehow that completely passed me by. Anyhow, so to describe the flag, Bill, because you just read the blurb, what's this flag look like?
So it has the same deep blue background of the existing Kiwi flag. There's the 4 red stars with the white border forming the Southern Cross on the right-hand side. Again, similar to the current flag. And then we have a rainbow trail coming on from the left-hand side of the flag, leading to a really poorly drawn kiwi, as in the little kiwi bird. So
I showed this to my brother last night to give him a rundown of the flags, just to check did I pick any obnoxiously boring ones. And he thought this was a terrible flag. He didn't understand and didn't get the joke. And then it was only after I explained to him that the brown blob in the center is meant to be a kiwi that he like burst himself.
Yeah, it's really kind of doesn't look like anything at first.
It's really hard to like pick out.
And when I saw Nyan Kiwi, I thought it might be like Nyan Cat and then like the 2 islands.
Oh,
it doesn't look at all like the 2 islands. Oh, it's a kiwi. It's the bird. It's the little flightless dude.
It's just I love. You can never underestimate how much the internet will just have the crack. just I love it. So that's number 4, right? Number 3. Okay?
Yeah.
Ready? Coming at you, number 3. So this is called Kiwi flag. Okay? Very simple, right? And the little blurb is, the New Zealand flag does not need to change. But if it must, then a stylized kiwi, like the armed forces have on their vehicles overseas, should be the only change. The Union flag is a part of our history and should remain as part of a flag. It is the duty of all New Zealanders to learn to recognise their own flag amongst all others. So there's a clear nod to the fact that the Australian flag and the New Zealand flag are identical. And so anyhow, open it up there.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I love it so much.
That is very silly.
But apparently that's the, according to this guy, that's the symbol for the New Zealand Armed Forces.
Wow.
Which is hilarious. I really hope it is. I didn't check it up. I didn't want to dedicate the time to it. But that's hilarious, like. So, for the listeners, this is the exact same flag as New Zealand currently has. Big Union Jack in the top left-hand corner. Red Southern Cross on the right. But underneath the Union Jack on the left-hand corner, there is a Kiwi who looks to have some sort of like spear. Yeah, he's a sort of spear, and he's lunging forward with a very intense look, very aggressive, intense look. But it's very funny because he's very pudgy, and this is brilliant. You have to check it out. Links to all of these are in the show notes.
It's kind of cute angry.
Yeah, he's very cute angry. Like he's full of rage and fury, but he's never going to be able to do it because of his diminutive stature. Hilarious.
Hold on a second.
Well, breaking news just in.
It looks like it might be a taiaha, the spear.
No. Okay. Alright, is this an indigenous sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a Maori weapon. I googled Maori spear. I got the Wikipedia article, and I'm looking at Google Images.
Well, hang on now. Hold on. No, Bill. We really should be figuring out whether or not this is the exact symbol on the New Zealand Armed Forces.
As far as I can tell, it isn't.
It isn't?
No.
Oh. Because that was part of the appeal of this flag. Because I was like, you can't seriously have soldiers going around the place with like chubby angry Kiwi on their shoulders. Like, it just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Like, this is not intimidating at all. So we have that guy. Okay, so that's design number. Was that 3 or 2?
That was 3.
That was 3. Okay, right. Number 2. 2 more to go. All right. So this one should be called, if you're looking in the tab, it should be called "Fire the Laser!" !
Laser spelled Lazar.
Yeah, the way it should be spelled. So, the laser beam projects a powerful image of New Zealand. I believe my design is so powerful, it does not need to be discussed.
That's it?
That's all he wrote. So open it up there.
That is fabulous. That is absolutely fabulous.
So do you want to describe it there? Because I took the last 2 and I need to just recover.
So this is the first one we've had which deviates significantly from the current flag. It's a black background And in the top left corner is a silver fern.
Yes, good design points, good design points.
Yeah, lovely design. Not dissimilar from the kind of sports logos, like the rugby logo and stuff.
Yeah. Quality, some might say.
In the bottom right, we have a kiwi.
And a better drawn kiwi than the couple of ones.
Significantly better,
Significantly better.
And this kiwi appears to be firing a green laser from its eyes, which is sort of hitting the left-hand side of the flag underneath the fern. Which
is brilliant, and it follows.
It's like bright green. It's like it's really bright green,
and it follows the rule that if one adds lasers to something, it automatically gets better. Yeah. So this is an inspired design. Someone has taken 3 key points of New Zealand culture: the black, the very very iconic color, the fern, the kiwi, and then has thought, how can we make this better? And they've added the laser, and it is an utter victory all around. And frankly, it's a bit of a disaster that it hadn't made it through the design selection process.
I can see no reason why this wasn't included on the long list.
Actually, it just dawned on me. You know what they could have done, actually?
What?
They could have had the kiwi fire the laser upwards. Like up at the top right-hand corner. And then immediately I'd be thinking that it's firing the laser towards Australia. Which would be hilarious, given the two of them are always at each other's throats. Again, in a very jovial way.
That's interesting, yeah.
That would have been really cool.
I was kind of wondering, would it be that? It was just as you started to say that, I was wondering, was that where it's aiming? But yeah, so it would have to be much more kind of northerly if we use a typical...
A typical projection, yeah.
Typical orientation, yeah.
Yeah, that would have been... I think this is the only reason why this flag did not make a true bill.
They didn't want to antagonise their larger neighbour.
No, it's that they weren't antagonising their larger neighbour. They were like, it's too soft. What you've done there is you've included a laser, right? You've shown a symbol of the power of our country, but you're just directing it down towards the Antarctic. No good. You have to point the laser at Australia and just be like, there you go, lads. That's our new flag. Boom, done. And finally, number 1. Thank you, listeners, for sitting through this and indulging me. Okay, so this one should be called Te Pepe.
Okay.
Now, I don't know what that is, and I'm probably...
I think I may have seen this already.
Oh, okay. Do you want to just try and describe it to me? Because if you're right, great. If you're wrong, then we have another hilarious flag to talk about.
Is this the flag? It's like, it's got a weird kind of pastel background and a kiwi, but with Pepe face.
No, yeah. What is a Pepe face? I don't know the internet. I've no taste, and I don't know the internet. What is this?
It's a meme.
It's a meme. Okay. All right. There you go. Squinty eyes, kind of a really sad look.
Yeah, it's usually a frog.
I see it. Yeah,
like a sad-looking frog.
It's very. Oh, I see what they've done there, and they've photoshopped or MS painted a beak onto the thing. Yes, this is the flag. So for listeners,
can I click into it now then?
Yes, of course. Look at it. Yeah. So bad. So, and there's a few points that I find like subtle points that I find to be hilarious about this. Okay, so for the listeners, we're looking at a sort of pastel bluish background.
Yeah, kind of very pale blue-grey.
Yeah, very pale blue-grey. That colour background. And then what we have is a geometric ellipse, okay, that forms the body of a kiwi. And the kiwi, there's so much here, I don't even know where to start. The kiwi is comprised of this geometric ellipse with a Pepe face on the front, where the frog's lips have been elongated into a beak, and the frog's feet have been coloured in brown to make them look like kiwi feet, but they're still clearly frog's feet.
The frog, the feet isn't a part of the Pepe thing. I think
they
were just badly drawn in.
They're just badly drawn in feet, right? And then on the body is the face is green, the lips and feet are brown, and the body is blue, and then in the body is the current New Zealand flag.
Yeah.
Right? Now, all of that is not what makes it hilarious for me. Obviously it's very funny, right? But the thing that I just find great, I find people go to extreme lengths to mock and ridicule and be funny and things like that. Someone clearly is taking the time to put this face there and do all that. But they always neglect something very minor. And what they've neglected to do is fully merge the flag, the New Zealand flag with the blue of the body.
I knew that was going to be it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you still have the outline of the flag. So it looks. Oh, it's just so terrible.
I think that's totally deliberate.
You think it's deliberate?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm looking at it now, and like, I suppose you could argue it's a drop shadow because it does really only affect the bottom and the right hand side, so it could be a drop shadow. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think this. I really don't know. Anyhow, the description. Go on.
The white of St Andrew's Saltaire in the Union Jack is kind of speckled with bits of blue. It's really weird.
Yeah, it's really strange. I don't know why they did that. I don't understand on it. Oh, it's just awful. And
maybe it's like deliberate. Maybe the whole thing is just because it's like deliberate JPEG artifacts, just to kind of rough it up a little.
Maybe, yeah, it could well be. But it's funny because the rest of it isn't isn't done with JPEG artifacts. It's very strange. You know what it could be as well? It could just be that they just downloaded a really poor quality flag of New Zealand.
Possibly, yeah. You know what I like?
What do you like?
I like that the body is just someone got like the circle tool. The body of the kiwi is just done with a circle tool.
Yeah, it's like
it's not like there's no like thought or shape or anything put into it. It's just okay, draw an egg, put Pepe on it. Done.
It's like perfectly. That's what I'm saying about geometric. It's like the only thing in here that is like geometric, like proper geometric, and it's so jarring. Like if you really think about it and look at it, none of the three elements of the body combine. So like the head doesn't really look attached to the body, and the body doesn't really look attached to the legs.
No,
it's just hilarious. Anyway, so the description is that feel when our eyes gaze upon the flightless and majestic rare kiwi bird is a classic icon of New Zealand's deep relationship with our ancestors, their spirit, land, and culture. And then it says, I can't pronounce this, Te Pepe Tamariki Te Papa Aotearoa, something like that.
That last word is the land of the long white cloud.
Okay, so I was going to assume that it was something to do with the like national anthem or national declaration or something. And they've clearly just inserted the word Pepe there.
Yeah, I'm trying to Google this, see if I can find what they're... And I took out the words Pepe and Papa, and I just still got Te Pepe.
Yeah, this flag has its own Twitter account.
Really?
Yeah, it's got a huge following to it, apparently. I did a quick bit of research last night. Apparently this thing has really become... It's captured the hearts and minds of people all across the globe.
Yeah, I'm very fond of this Pepe flag.
Are you? Would that be the best one so far?
It's the most kind of determinedly ridiculous.
My favourite would have been the laser flag had they just aimed their weapons of mass destruction in the correct corner. My favourite really is that Kiwi flag with the Armed Forces Kiwi, just because it's like the design, the little blurb is so serious, and like the Kiwi is like it seems to have like roots in something serious, but it's just not serious, and it's really cute, and it has a little spear, and it's a little bit angry. Oh, it's just great, so good. So
I think overall my favourite is probably the long white sheep cloud, because I think it's quite a witty little joke. And the fact that the back end of the sheep cloud is off frame, I think it just that adds just a touch of ridiculousness to it.
Yeah, it's great. Anyhow, there you have it. I think that's a flag corner. That's us, I think.
I think that's us done. Okay, so the main topic for today is from an email sent to us by Sami Mobarak Sadakierski.
Okay.
Who was writing Building a World that's set in Neolithic or Chalcolithic time period. So that's the late Stone Age, the Neolithic. The Chalcolithic is the Copper Age.
Yes.
And they're looking for any resources on these periods and the people, or do we know anything about it?
Okay.
Acknowledging that it's very far away from building stars and planets.
Exactly, so it's very out of my comfort zone. So what I did was I talked to an archaeologist friend of mine.
Okay.
So I basically interviewed her for about 3 hours. We had a 3-hour long talk.
Wow.
About this stuff. Now, we decided the best way to proceed was to have a discussion based on her area of expertise.
Okay.
Because that's what she can talk about the most readily. Now, her area of expertise is not the Neolithic or the Copper Age.
Right.
Okay, so her area is actually earlier. It's the Mesolithic. So we'll go through this. Don't know if it's going to particularly help that person, but there will be a ton of resources in the show notes. And in general, I hope this will like act as a sort of springboard.
Sure.
Okay. But yeah, basically, I had this interview with this friend of mine, and we talked, and then I'm going to try and convey this information to you, and in doing so, convey it also to the listeners. Yeah.
Sure.
Now, before we start, I'm going to need to set out the rules of engagement here. This friend of mine is a serious academic, so not just like me, someone who has a bit of free time and likes talking about astrophysics and like being all speculative and stuff. This is a person who has like an academic integrity that I wish to protect. As such, I want to keep this person nameless. I want to keep this person anonymous, but I want to just take a second to just credit this person, saying thank you so much for taking the time out of your like busy schedule to come talk to me about these things. And her knowledge was it was amazing listening to her talk, like the way she could ad lib. Without any sort of preparation, she could talk at length about these topics, and I'm very grateful and very privileged to be in a position to talk to people like that.
Great, thanks very much.
Yeah, I just want to put it out there though. So full credit goes to this person, but just anonymous credit. And also, I'm acting as the conduit now from which this information will pass. So there is a high probability that I may say things that are not entirely accurate because I don't know anything about this time period. Okay. I have extensive notes in front of me and I'll do my absolute best to convey things correctly, but there is a chance that I mightn't convey them 100% correctly. If in the case that happens, this is a fault on my part, not on my friend's part.
Yeah, errors are your fault for being an idiot. Their fault for being bad at their job.
Exactly. And I'm sure she'll be in touch, and if there's anything that needs correcting, urgent correcting, we'll drop it in follow up from in the next episode.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. So I'm just going to start talking, Bill, and then interrupt me with some questions, and we'll see how we proceed. Yeah.
Okay. I have one question before we begin.
Oh, okay. Go for it.
So they're asking about. Sammy is asking about the Late Stone Age and the Copper Age.
Yes.
What makes a Late Stone Age? What separates the Neolithic from the Mesolithic and the Paleolithic?
Okay, so my understanding, based on the interview I had, was that the Mesolithic is predominantly like hunter-gatherers, and the Neolithic is where you see the rise of agriculture.
Okay.
So I think that's a big divide. And then obviously the Copper Age, but I'm assuming is where people start to begin to work copper, and then you progress on. So that's the main thing. So this conversation will be predominantly surrounded around hunter-gathering type societies.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay, so in particular, the area of expertise this person has is the Mesolithic in Northwest Europe, and in particular Ireland, okay? And the dates for this would be about 7,800 BC until maybe 4,500 to about 4,000 BC. So that's the time period in which most of this discussion took place.
Mm-hmm. Of course, these aren't specific dates. It's not like you can say with absolute accuracy that this is the point at which the Stone Age ended and the Copper Age began, and it varies from region to region. Like, some places had some technologies before others, right? And there are still people who are living Stone Age lifestyles. Exactly.
I took this date range as being the range of her expertise.
Yeah, with her expertise with regard to Northwest Europe.
Exactly. And then she mentioned the point that the further east you go, the quicker things get invented. Like, agriculture starts up in the east first and then spreads. So it's not in this time period, there's a homogeny across the planet. That's not the case, obviously. There's various different cultures will adapt at different rates.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also the point we make, because we're going to be talking about hunter-gatherers, that no two hunter-gatherers are the same. Because we have a problem that we paint, or at least I had this problem, and it was abundantly clear in the interview that I had this one idea of what a hunter-gatherer is, and that applied to everyone always. And that's wrong. Just like there's no such thing as two agrarian people being the same. Like the difference between a rural farmer and say a mass production farmer is huge. Mm-hmm. And the same thing applies for hunter-gatherers. There's going to be a huge difference between different groups of hunter-gatherers.
Yeah.
Okay? So, I suppose to start off, let's just give an overview. We're looking at Ireland in the Mesolithic between 7,800 BC and about 4,500 BC. We're looking at hunter-gatherers inhabiting the country that is now Ireland. And we're looking at a population level of somewhere in the hundreds or thousands. Okay, and I thought that was quite interesting. Yeah, just interesting to get the amount of people that would have inhabited the land. Obviously, these numbers are a little bit vague. You can't get an exact population, but that's the kind of estimates, hundreds or thousands. And it would have worked that there would have been several groups sharing the entirety of Ireland as their territory.
Okay.
All right, and like a group, it could be like a family group, 2 to 3 families, and that would be one group, and they would roam around Ireland. Or at least that's one model. So you have the model I thought was the only model, which is you have the wandering hunter-gatherer.
Yeah.
So you have groups going about on like seasonal routes about the country, visiting various areas and subsisting.
Okay.
But there's also, I think, a more fascinating one that was brought up in this interview, and you have the idea of the settled hunter-gatherer, which I think is and it's something that I didn't even think of. The fact that you can have hunter-gatherers in one location with short-term permanence, we'll say, like generational permanence, and they could live there. And the more I talk to my friend, the more I realize that this model of subsistence isn't correct. That hunter-gatherers could lead very kind of like lavish lifestyles in a way.
I remember hearing from someone before, I remember I read it in a book or something, that it's thought that hunter-gatherers would actually have a lot of free time.
This came up in the interview, and I'll probably talk about it at a further point. Yeah, if they were settled, like if they had a settlement, say, and they were settled next to like a river, that had like abundant supply of salmon, like it's easy to harvest that food. You don't need to like worry about where your next meal is coming from. It's like literally just at the riverbed. So they could harvest like quite bountiful amounts, and then as such have tons of free time to do other things.
Yeah.
So this model of like hunter-gatherers being like quasi-starving, roaming around the land, trying to find like berries and bits of like dead animal or whatever is just, that's what I thought it was, is wrong, basically.
Or at least it's not necessarily true. And it's not true for Ireland in 7,500 BC.
Exactly. And again, all of this is going to come with the caveat that 1, I don't know what I'm talking about, and 2, it varies completely depending on where you are. She did make the point that Ireland is particularly boring during this period. She was like, if you want really interesting stuff, go look at like the continent. The continent's very, very interesting. And Ireland is a bit like, meh. But anyhow, such is life, and we cracked on anyways. So again, just to overview, we have these groups inhabiting the island of Ireland. Now, a group, what I found really interesting, a group could be bound by blood, so family groups. But you could also have groups like bound by the same seasonal routes they take, which I think is very easy, very, very interesting. So you have various different groups that aren't like genetically related or whatever coming together on their little routes around Ireland, and I think that's a really cool idea.
And would you likely then have groups that were bound by the seasonal routes and did not become blood, like that it didn't mix with each other? Like they didn't mix like familially. They didn't interbreed, but they stayed part of the same kind of root group.
No, that didn't come up, so I'm not going to make any sort of facts about it, but I would assume that there will be some level of interbreeding.
Yeah.
It would be hard to imagine that doesn't happen if they come in contact long enough, you know?
Yeah. Well, that seems to kind of strange that we could say then that they aren't bound by blood, because after a while they would be.
It could be like, say, again, this is me speculating, this did not come up. Say you have, you find a site in the north of the country, say, right? Mm-hmm. And you find certain implements there that can only be made there, okay? Mm-hmm. Like axes or whatever, can only be used from the natural resources there. And then you have another group down south that have their own individual stamp or something. And then I'm assuming you could find a site somewhere in the middle of Ireland, say, where they came into contact, when you have an intermingling of both sort of sets of artifacts. So you know that these people didn't grow up in the same locality, but they came together. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
And again, this is my speculation. I really don't know. If my friend wants to leave a comment, that would be much appreciated.
Of course, the thing about artifacts, though, is that even in the Stone Age, again from a historian friend of mine, a conversation a few years ago, even in the Stone Age, you had trade routes all across Europe. Like, you can find like flints that were carved or napped or whatever or maybe it was metalware made in southern Italy, turns up in Cornwall.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like my friend spoke about there being one man, I believe it was a man, who they analysed his diet, what he would have eaten, and in doing so, I don't understand the particulars of how it's done, but in doing so, they were able to establish that he began life on the continent and finished up in England.
Wow.
So you have this thing, and then obviously, like, people came to Ireland, I believe, on boats. So I mean, like, there was that level of traveling as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I suppose this is a good point to say that if you're writing like Stone Age fiction, it's not as kind of colloquial as I thought it was. You know what I mean, like it can be more interconnected. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I would like to focus primarily on this idea of the settled hunter-gatherer.
Sure.
Okay, because I just think the thought I had in my head the entire way through the interview was you could very easily reimagine, like, say, Hobbiton as a Stone Age settlement.
Really?
Yeah. We'll go through it, but so that's why I think it's very interesting. So if we frame this discussion as sort of, let's try and reimagine Hobbiton and the Shire and things as it would have been had Lord of the Rings been set in Stone Age times and not pseudo medievalism.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's talk about the obvious thing if you watch the Lord of the Rings videos or Lord of the Rings movies is you have this wonderful little town.
Yeah.
So the settlement in Ireland at this period wouldn't have been like town like, obviously. It would have been maybe one building in a clearing. Okay. So you're not looking at towns and things like that. You're looking at like a handful of buildings, and these buildings would have been conical in structure.
Okay. What were they made from?
So they were made from like wooden poles, shoved into the ground, and like bound together by a rope material. So it could have been like a rope made out of bark or plant fibers or something like that. And then they could have been thatched. They could have been draped in skins or covered in turf sods, that sort of thing. So you can actually get this idea of like a quasi like teepee shaped hobbit hole, which I think was really cool. Which is a really neat idea.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a very cool idea. And these houses again, but teepee is the wrong word. I did a bit of Google searching and stuff. These houses are quite large. They can be quite big. They reconstructed one, according to my friend, in UCD, the University College Dublin. And they managed to be able to fit about 40 school children in it.
Okay. So
it's quite large structures, and you can imagine with furnishing could fit maybe 2 to 3 families in there. 3 probably max. You know, so it's not like a little tent. Like there's quite a significant structure, and then so you'd have that one central structure in like a clearing, and then like radiating out from that, they may have used the surroundings to inform their settlement. So you might have like there might be an area that is particularly dry or something, and they might make like a little covered food area there.
Yeah.
And they could have like racks for drying and smoking fish or whatever. And they could have like
charcuterie.
A what?
A little charcuterie.
What's a charcuterie?
It's a business that smokes meat.
Oh really? Oh, that's really it's a really cute little thing. Yeah. And you can have like a little fishing station on like say if you're like we mentioned situated on a very affluent river bend. You have a little fishing station there. You could have a little hunting station somewhere else. So the impression I got that their settlements, if they became settled, would be very of the land, and they would rather than this modern idea of dominating the land would inform how they build.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great. And immediately when she began telling me these things, like that's such a vibrant sort of settlement. You know, like again, think of Hobbiton, think of like Bilbo Baggins' thing as being a conical structure, and then outside he has his he dries his fish, outside, and he has a little like, and he can have a smoking chamber or something. And so it's not this idea of like kind of cavemen in leotards roaming around, you know, being savages, you know. It's very, very sophisticated, and I think this the point I got the most is that if you write some Stone Age fiction, like be sophisticated about it, because these are not. It's easy for modern humans to think back and say everyone before us was stupid and couldn't do things, but that's not the case. These people were very sophisticated, and I think if you're going to write fiction, be sophisticated in your treatment of them.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, they were still humans with a full measure of human dignity.
Exactly, and it's so easy to just go down the sort of ignorant caveman route, and that's something that I really want to just say that you shouldn't do, because one, it's immoral, and two, it just like really
lazy and boring.
Yeah, it makes your fiction really bland. Yeah. Exactly.
And I said the full measure of human dignity. You might kind of think that they weren't, and you might think that you know, modern people are also savages, but at least be consistent. Like, you know, I'm sure they weren't any more cruel back then than we are now.
Yeah, the only thing I suppose they just didn't have like the wealth of resources we have left to them by previous generations. You know, like we have, like, you know, the works of the Greek philosophers, we have mathematics. This helps like me as a modern person out tremendously. Like I could never prove all the stuff that like Pythagoras proved on my own. Like I need this to be assumed in the culture in order to be in any way smart. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
they had a very, very different knowledge set.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting when you think about that though as well. Like just imagine if you had to in your daily life prove from first principles a lot of the things you do. Just imagine how difficult that would be. Like we take so much for granted. That's what's come beforehand. Like the ability to do algebra. You know, like everyone complains about algebra, but like life would be so hard without the ability to do algebra. And now it's just assumed that we can deal. Like like people might hate it, but people like everyone knows that you can deal with a variable. That's common knowledge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then if you don't have that, life is just, you know, a hell of a lot different.
Calculus, I think, is even better, but that's just me.
Well, but people don't usually use calculus in an everyday setting. Yeah. So calculus definitely, like, you know, the ability to be able to actually for once define motion is good, because I think the Greeks thought movement was non-existent. It was it was irrelevant. It didn't mean anything. And then when calculus came around, they could like pin it on it. Because whenever the Greeks tried to study like movement or like acceleration and things like that, all their equations essentially just began dividing by zero.
Huh.
So they were just like, I can't.
Do you mean like kind of Zeno's paradox?
No, not Zeno's paradox. Like if you want to get what your speed is at a certain point in time, okay? Right, yeah. You have to narrow the speed down, narrow the time frame in which you're thinking down, and then narrow the range of speeds. So essentially, what happens if you want to actually get like instantaneous velocity or something, you have to divide 0 by 0. This was a problem for the Greeks, and then calculus came along and was like, actually, we can do it.
Yeah.
Anyhow, sorry, we're getting derailed. And another interesting point that you brought up, and these are really like great subtleties that I really want to like convey. There's evidence archaeologists have found of a tool working inside a house.
Okay.
All right. Now, for a Philistine like me, that sounds like, well, duh, that's obvious. Who cares? But with an archaeological eye, you could begin to draw conclusions like, for example, that required light for them to be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to have some sort of notion of how to orientate their houses. So like orientating the opening towards the light, but like say away from the prevailing wind, which I thought was very, very, very cool. That they have this sort of understanding, and again, an understanding that we probably don't have anymore. Like I don't know what the prevailing wind is here.
Or they could have had a fire.
Or they could have had a fire. Yeah, but like again, maybe some structures, a fire is just not very plausible.
Yeah,
you know, like you might end up smoking out the place. I don't know. But again, it's just speaking to the volumes of how clever these people would have been.
One quick question. You mentioned that they could have had like 2 to 3 or 4 families in a in a house. How big were families? What comprised a family?
So, like again, the example she gave, it's hard to tell and make generalizations, but it could be a man and a wife, their 2 to 3 kids, perhaps, and then their couple of kids. So it could be maybe 20 people, maybe.
Okay.
Something like that.
Man and wife was a meaningful concept.
Biologically, it's a meaningful concept, but I don't know. This didn't come up in the thing. I don't know whether or not
wife isn't a meaningful concept biologically.
No, I mean like the idea of a man and woman getting together to make babies.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that was a thing, but I don't know if they knew about marriage or if that was a thing. Like the idea of being bound to another person, I don't know, and I don't know if that's built into like some sort of ritual belief behind it. I don't know.
Did they have an understanding of the biology behind reproduction? Like, did they have a connection between sex and reproduction?
Surely.
Why surely?
Well, why not? Tell me why not.
Because some cultures don't.
Do they not?
Yeah.
But how? Oh, as in like they think that the stork brings the baby.
Well, not like exactly that, but kind of.
Oh, I believe I read a thing about somewhere in Oceania that the indigenous people have this sort of belief. I don't know. Again, you see, everything we were talking about comes from the fossil record.
Mm-hmm.
Very difficult to talk about this from the fossil record.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And a lot of it is inferring work, and I don't want to infer on the part of archaeologists.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the Trobriand Islands?
In Oceania?
Somewhere in the Pacific, I think, yeah.
Okay.
Off the coast of New Guinea.
Alright.
And
what's their story? Do you know? Does it say?
An ancestral spirit enters the body and causes conception.
How do they not
presumably, like, nowadays they know, but I mean, until modern times, that was not a part of their knowledge set.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, actually. That's a very interesting point.
Because like everyone was married at some point and everyone had babies, so there was no kind of counterexample.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, like, how do you not make that connection right? But if you have so many positive data sets, then and no negatives to counteract that, then yeah, you can easily make that assumption. That's a very valid point. And then I suppose, there might be times as well where a couple would have sex and a baby wouldn't be produced.
Yeah.
And then they could be like, well, that clearly wasn't this isn't the mechanism for making children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I don't know on that, basically. Unfortunately. Well, like, about the family though, which is interesting, the people lived, the oldest like surviving people from this area, about 40 to 50 years.
Okay, that's pretty old.
Which is quite old. Again, there's this idea that because of like subsistence, there was like high infanticide, that the people didn't live that long, but actually people could live, relatively long lives. And there's even evidence been found that people cared for their elderly, which again is a thing that if you work under a subsistence model, that you just don't have time to do that. You need to just continue hunting and trying to feed yourself. But there's been like disabled.
It makes a lot of sense, though.
Go on.
It makes a lot of sense to care for the elderly.
Yeah, because I mean, like the elderly, for example, could be obviously the powerful ones in the family structure, and they could hold the ritual
and
knowledge.
they have knowledge. Like if you get to 50. Then presumably you know a bit about the local animals and the local plants, or like how to make tools. All that kind of thing. Like you have decades of accumulated knowledge.
Exactly. So
it's economically sensible to hold on to that.
Absolutely. There's that's a great reason for holding on to them. So yeah, and that was relatively surprising to me. I didn't realize that could have been the like upper age bound, and I also thought, again, in my ignorance, I thought, oh yeah, well sure, 90% of the babies wouldn't make it, and all old people wouldn't make it, so. So anyhow, so we have this idea of the settlement. Now, next thing I was thinking was clothing, right? So we walk into the Hobbit hole, or the Stone Age structure now, and there stands Bilbo, or his Stone Age counterpart, dressed in all his fineries. And So it's worth thinking about how would you represent people visually in a work of fiction, right?
Okay.
And again, I was under the impression we have leotards and just lots of nakedness. This is not entirely the case, right? So because you have an idea that hunter-gatherers could have had free time based on like bountiful harvest, there's nothing to suggest that they wouldn't like sit around like say plaiting hair, making clothes out of salmon skin. This is something I learned from my friend, that apparently salmon skin is a great material for making clothes. And a very attractive material. I believe she said she bought a salmon skin item of clothing one time. And apparently this is a very nice bit of clothing. So, and they would also they could well make natural dyes from the surroundings. They could be sitting around making beads out of animal teeth, doing some sort of feather work, adorning themselves with feathers, body painting, all of this sort of stuff. So you're looking at what could potentially be an extremely rich and colourful and vibrant society.
Yeah.
And again, ignorant people like me don't think this. We think in shades of brown. Whereas this could be an explosion of colour. An absolute explosion of colour. And there's an interesting thing. They found a skeleton one time where the teeth had been worn in such a way that the only explanation is that it had been ground from the cheek side.
Okay.
And then they concluded that this must be cheek piercings.
Cool.
So body modification even could be a thing, even as far back as that. Tattoos, not a thing.
Not a thing.
Not a thing. We might find something in the ensuing years that tells us it is, but in this era, not, because my friend told me there that the earliest example of tattoos on a person is 3000 BC. And this is from Otzi the Iceman, or Ötzi the Iceman. Yeah, so he's a little bit later.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe you're looking at just body painting as opposed to tattoos. But again, it's fiction. I mean, it's not like, people will be running for their flaming torches and pitchforks if you put tattoos on your Stone Age hunter-gatherers. And then a very interesting point you pointed out about just their aesthetic overall is that if you look at the Paleolithic and the cave paintings, and they are beautiful, right? Like beautiful works of art, and we acknowledge that as being beautiful works of art, but then somewhere in the collective consciousness we have this discontinuity where we think that when it gets into hunter-gatherer times, it's like, oh well, then they just all became really bland and all shades of brown. But there's no reason to suggest that sort of level of artistic and design integrity were to be could not be carried on throughout the ages,
Well, the cave painters would have been hunter-gatherers, wouldn't they?
Yeah, yes, but they are the previous, I believe, my chronology could be wrong, they are the previous era. It's called the Paleolithic. It comes before, the Paleolithic comes before the Mesolithic.
Right.
Again, I don't really know the distinction between all of these things because I'm not an archaeologist, but the impression I got that they were before that.
Okay.
And then, what else in terms of clothing? Any trippy... Oh, yeah. There is evidence of a headdress being found in England. So, what they had done was they had taken a deer skull and put holes in the back of the deer skull and removed the antlers. And they could have potentially, put skins in there and hung it as a sort of, headdress.
That's metal.
That's really metal. Yeah. Oh, actually, a pin on metal. There's a really metal thing you need to know about in a second. So this could have been a hunting disguise, or say a headgear for a shaman. So again, I just want to paint this image of a really wonderfully vibrant culture, and that I think this should be conveyed in any works of fiction. Any questions on that?
No, I don't think I have any questions. So the thrust there is human dignity and visually vibrant.
Definitely. And also consider surroundings. Can I just speculate a little bit on things?
I'm not going to be able to stop you.
You're not. So obviously this is real world archaeology, right? But remember that you can have a Stone Age people and using non-Stone Age materials depending on how you set up your world. Okay? This did not come from my archaeologist friend. Please, no one ever quote her on this, okay?
Say that again?
Say what again?
All of that.
All of that. So you could set up a hunter-gatherer society based on Earth in the Mesolithic.
Yeah.
But they could use non-Stone Age things given their surroundings, and how you can do that by how you set up the world. Now, I will give you an example, right?
Okay.
Stephen L. Gillette, in his Worldbuilding, a writer's guide to constructing life-supporting planets and star systems, proposes a scenario whereby the Earth's atmosphere becomes chlorinated.
Okay.
So you have chlorine and oxygen being the predominant elements in the atmosphere.
That would be bad.
It would be bad for current Earth, but it actually works out really cool. And there's various different ways in which intelligent life could still evolve differently, but they still evolve. But the big sort of thing is that, like, trees, for example, they wouldn't be made of bark. They'd be made of what's the chemical compound? PVC. Yeah, but depending on how the chlorine reacts with various organic compounds, he goes through the chemistry in detail in the book. You should pick it up, guys. It's a good book. You can have PVC trees. So you could have like a Stone Age settlement, except that like the wooden poles bolstering up the settlement are made of plastic.
Weird.
Yeah, so I just want to make this point. Like, you can still mess with things in a really strange way. Obviously, there's
demand that Earth immediately liberates this planet.
We all just been chlorinating the atmosphere. And he comes up with a really neat way of doing it. Like, he breaks it down that if there was some organism that used like chlorine as a sort of combustion thing for, that's how they convert their food. And then if their population grew, they would slowly, like very slowly over time, fill the atmosphere with certain levels of chlorine. And it's all very well thought out and all makes perfect sense. And I just want to point that out there because you can't have a good podcast without discussing trees made of plastic. Okay, so I want to ask you a question at this point, Bill.
Go for it.
Is any of this surprising to you?
No.
No, why not? Is this something you always knew? Like, again, did you not have this idea of, the leotard and the naked group running through the wild after some rabbit?
I mean, I always kind of figured that would be the case at some point.
Okay.
I'm sure that there is a point in history where that is still true, but I mean, they're humans. Like why would they be just like naked savages in a puddle? Yeah,
you see, I think you're just a better person than I am because that's what I always thought. Man, I can't express how much I dislike you.
You love me. You think I'm great.
Okay, so let's crack on to another thing. How about we talk? So we have settlements, clothing, with a little bit of thing on the family. Let's talk tools and weapons.
Before we go on about the family, do we know anything about like how they constructed gender?
Okay, so first thing to say on this is that prehistory was written by privileged white males.
Yeah.
Right? So the problem is that's
what we do.
There's an awful lack of like diversity and discussion about like gender roles and things like that in prehistory. And there's a movement, I'm told, at the moment where people are beginning to relook at the evidence with like the eyes of an enlightened 21st century culture. Not in Ireland, but in I can't remember the exact place. It's someplace other than Ireland. I can't remember. There has been evidence of male bodies being buried with what could be considered female items, and vice versa. So you do have this sort of idea that it's not what we think as like the man's role in society and the woman. It's not like the man will be buried with a spear and the woman will be buried with a pot. There is evidence to suggest that there was more nuance to gender going on. Mm-hmm. There's, in terms of like gender roles, like gender working roles, there's no evidence to suggest anything really, because the only way you can get at this is through skeletal analysis.
Yeah.
So you can analyze the skeletons and to test to see where the stresses are in their bones. So for example, like if you were to find like, say, I don't know, a female skeleton that had like tennis elbow, one could infer then that woman spent an awful lot of time like paddling, so it could have been like the fisher, so it could have been the provider for the family. We don't, basically the impression I got is that we don't have the evidence to be able to actually make any sort of conclusive statement about them. You know?
Okay.
But this is the interesting thing. There's so much of prehistory that we don't know of because, I mean, like, we're only going on what we can dig up, and so much is obviously naturally going to be lost. Very often it's worth looking at current hunter-gatherer societies and using that as an inspiration for your writing.
Yeah.
And in current hunter-gatherers, you have so much variety. Like, for example, you have some groups, the men only hunt. That's the male role is hunting. In some groups, both the men and women hunt. There's an equal thing going on there. And in other groups, like the entire family, including the kids, hunt. So there's a huge diversity in terms of how gender works in the workplace, so to speak, on Earth currently. And there's nothing to say that wouldn't be the case in previous society.
How much do we know about how gender is constructed in current hunter-gatherer societies? Like, can we say for sure that it observes a binary and that it kind of follows what we in the West have as the sort of biological distinction?
Oh, now that I don't know. Oh, because I didn't focus on we tried very hard to not focus on current hunter-gatherer societies. We won't talk about the past. I don't know. That's a question I will put towards my friend, because that's a very good question.
Because, yeah, that is something that, like, I mean, we're saying that men and women hunt in some societies, but like, are we using the same definitions is the question I have there.
Yeah, that's I honestly I can't, that did not come up, and that is something I will talk to her about. That sounds really cool. But just continuing on this thing, because to go through what I've talked about, in Inuit society, you have this idea of the man hunts. Okay, so performing what would have classically have seen as being a masculine role, right? But he does it in a very not unmasculine, very a way that is contrary to what people in the 19th century thought a man's role would be, right? So he hunts for food, not like as the provider, but almost to appease his partner. Okay. So if he doesn't come back from the hunt with a bountiful supply of food, she has the right in society to leave him for someone else that could provide better. Okay. So in that sort of structure, while it might be seen that the man hunting has all the power actually lies with the woman. Yeah. And she has control of, like, if times are scarce, she has control over the food rationing. So she has it sounds like she has almost total control over things, even though on the surface it looks like it's a standard setup of kind of gender roles. I'm just going to quote my friend here, because it was a really nice sentiment. She was like, "Don't let the failings of 20th century archaeology affect the types of diversity that people show in their fiction." Yeah. I think that's a very, very, very neat way of summing it up. I think that's a very good way. There is, let me see, what else is there? And while we're on the subject of men and women, there's also a question, this is kind of touching back on the marriage thing. There's also a question about, the less interesting question is, was there marriage? The more interesting question is, how did marriage work? And whether marriage was like exogamy or endogamy. So was it in marrying or out marrying? Okay. So can you break those down for me? Right. So exogamy is where if I traveled to my next town and married someone in the next town. That's exogamy. And endogamy is
someone from outside the parish.
Someone from outside the parish. I'm not sure if the non-Irish listeners will get that, but that's hilarious. Well done, Bill. Someone from outside the parish. And endogamy would be marrying someone within the parish. Right. Okay. And so there's evidence. This is a really cool little story. In Japan, in Hokkaido, I believe is the northern island. Yeah, the northernmost island. Yeah. Northernmost island. Yeah. So you had a situation there. I don't know exactly what time period this is at, but you had a situation where you had two distinct groups living there. You had a hunter-gatherer group inhabiting the coast. Mm-hmm. And you had an agrarian culture inhabiting the inside, the interior of the country. Yeah. Right? And now the coastal hunter-gatherer group had diets that, were marine diets, like they ate a lot of fish and whale and that sort of thing. And the internal group had a lot of terrestrial diets, so the usual things we assume with land-based food. And through being able to track what people ate, this shows up in like analysis of things you uncover. You can see where they moved to.
Okay.
So like you can have like a person that has a signature of a marine diet be buried with a person who has a signature within the group of people who all have signatures of a terrestrial diet.
Right.
And so you have this evidence. You found there's 2 cemeteries in Japan where there was 2 women's whose diets were of the interior group. Okay, but they were buried culturally as the coastal group.
Huh.
So you have this
that's
idea.
Evidence of exogamy.
That's evidence of marrying out. So then again, this further speaks to the idea of there's a greater connection that I think myself and other people give to things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That does make sense. That's interesting.
Yeah, I'm glad. Okay, so right, and oh, by the way, Bill, feel free to stop me whenever you think we're done. Okay.
Yeah.
But we gotta. Can we talk tools now?
Yeah.
Because tools is going to quickly lead on to warfare, and warfare is going to quickly lead on to probably the most metal thing I have to tell you today.
Cool.
So I figured you'd be interested in this one. So obviously, I think everyone has an idea of what sort of tools would be used. Basically, what you can make of stone and wood and binding the 2 together. Again, I thought this was like just going to be axes, really.
Yeah.
Turns out they have an entire inventory of a wonderful collection of tools. And some of them not entirely obvious. So I'll just go through a list here.
Adzes and mattocks and shovels and...
You, sir, are a very intelligent human being. Do you know that? Because, like, I had mind blow when my friend told me about adzes. Like, complete mind blow. And you just rattle off like it's nothing. Like, oh.
I nearly got hit with an adze once.
Did you?
Yeah.
Huh. I get hit by an adze regularly.
What?
Scrabble.
Oh, right.
one of my favourite words. Although, people who play Scrabble, can someone let me know? I suppose I could just check this in a dictionary, but does anyone want to let me know, is ADZ the same as ADZE? Because they're both ads. And I wonder if
Scrabble, you're always saying Scrabble has nothing to do with knowing what the words mean, Edgar, so it's not really
Oh yeah, no, well, this is why I'm not really bothered looking it up, because I don't really care what they mean. But in this case, I'm wondering, has Scrabble completely bastardized the word ads just by doing ADZ, because it's meant to be spelled with an E. But anyhow, that's an aside. Right, the list, right? So we have axes, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously of all varying shapes and sizes. We have knives, adzes, we have various scrapers, we have little scoops for removing limpets. We have a bow and arrow, which is always cool.
Okay, so they did have those by the Mesolithic.
Yes, they have bow and arrows, yeah. They had atlatls. See, I bet you'll notice as well. You're so intelligent. It's ridiculous.
Bear with me. An atlatl, is that like a spear thrower?
That's exactly what it is. It's a spear thrower. Yeah, exactly. And then obviously by comparison, they must also have spears. So
slings.
Slings would definitely be a thing. We didn't talk about them, but they would definitely be a thing. And there's so many things you could do. Now, the interesting ones, right? The interesting ones, I think, are a saw.
Okay.
Now, that's very interesting, I found. So they found evidence of where they had put various bits of stone set into a bit of wood. So it wasn't just like the one bit of stone and the one bit of wood, and that was your thing. They had composite tools.
Yeah.
So I think that's fascinating, a saw. And then also there's evidence of what can be perceived as a grater.
Oh.
Yeah. So they could have like sat around grating roots or whatever to cook, which I think is great. And again,
delicious.
It's all just delicious. Again, it's all just like little bits of flint or stone or whatever material it is in some wood, and then whatever configuration you come up with there, you know?
Can I raise one of my very, very favourite weapons here?
Yeah, go for it.
Now, I'm not going to say that I'm definitely going to pronounce this correctly, but it's a pre-Columbian American weapon.
Okay.
Kind of Mesoamerican and Mexican weapon called the Macuatl.
Oh god, okay.
Is a wooden sword with obsidian blades embedded down either side. So it's like a two-handed huge, like I guess something like a cricket bat maybe, except larger.
Right.
And then down the edges there are like obsidian knives inserted in it.
Wow.
Yeah. And apparently they could like decapitate a horse with a single blow and stuff.
No way.
Yeah.
That, sir, That is awesome.
Isn't that like super cool?
That is really cool. That is proper cool. It's somewhat of a uneducated question here. Obsidian, right? Mm-hmm. What is real life obsidian compared to like the obsidian of Skyrim?
I can't remember what it is in Skyrim. It's like metal, isn't it? It's what like orcish weapons and armor are made from?
Yeah, but it's used as metal, but I believe it's like volcanic glass.
Yeah, it's actually a kind of glass, yeah.
Oh, yeah, alright, so it's used correctly.
So it's like super sharp, but quite brittle.
Oh, okay. Oh, does that mean they needed to have a whole load of these weapons? Because after one horse decapitating session, you'd be like, "Wow, that's my weapon gone."
No, you could just replace the blades.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
And maybe like they used small enough bits, and the way they were embedded made them like less likely to break, or they used kind of like broad. Because I've seen the word prismatic used to describe them, so they might have been quite broad, but narrowing to a sharp point.
Okay, cool. We must get a picture of this from the show notes.
Yeah, no, they're very, very badass.
I will say though, there's no swords in Mesolithic times.
No,
like in Ireland, like we're looking at blunt weapons, like bashy things,
and piercy things, and small stabby things, or slashy things.
But we're not talking swords. Yeah. And things like that, so that's important.
The swords really need to be metal. Really.
Yeah, really. I mean, like, a wooden sword isn't really going to do a whole shebang. No. Well, without the obsidian. Obsidian helps, you know.
I mean, you can still batter a lad with them, but you're not going to, like...
Yeah, but you may as well use your axe to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know, there's no point inventing a whole new thing, you know. What's very interesting as well is the idea that you'd have a whole host of unnamed tools as well. So... like, you know, when we work metal, throughout the whole process, nothing useful happens. It's all a means to an end. So you work metal until you get to the end and it cools down, you do all that, and then you have a sword, and then that's useful. But when you work stone, all the bits you chip off, they in and of themselves can be tools.
Yes. So
you have this sort of like the actual tool making process produces various other tools. And this is an interesting thing because I think... especially those of us who like fiction, we are very much bound by this idea. You have the axe, the sword, the dagger, whereas they would have had a more kind of like fluid sense of what a tool is.
Yeah.
And I think that is very interesting. That was the thing I found particularly interesting.
There was a class of tool, and then everything within that was kind of its own thing. And they would evaluate individual items on their qualities. Would that be kind of a way of looking at it?
Exactly. My friend had a wonderful way of describing it. Expedient tools.
Oh.
Which I think is just sums it up very well. Kind of like off-the-cuff tools. I think it's great. Okay. Now, what's the other thing? Oh yeah, while we're talking about tools, I suppose this is a quasi-tool. No pots.
No pots?
No pots. Not in this time period.
Interesting.
Yeah. And this is something that if you're writing fiction for, you know, for like archaeologists to read, this would be very jarring for them. If you set it in Stone Age and everyone has pots. The only way of having pots, I suppose, if you want to be true to life, is to make sure that your hunter-gatherer society operates somewhere near an agrarian society, because we have pots kind of came in with agriculture as well.
So I'm assuming they had bowls and things.
Yeah, like the shell could have been a good bowl.
Yeah, or carved from wood.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But in terms of cooking, though, wooden bowls ain't great.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, wooden bowls and then shells and things like that. Yeah, they would have those things, but no pottery. That's important. And let's face it, pottery's quite boring.
No, it isn't.
Yeah, remember did you do art in school?
Only for junior cert.
Yeah, so leaving cert art for me was all I remember is a blur of pottery. That's all I remember.
Oops.
Oh, you okay?
Load of table noise.
Oh, table noise!
We have a kiln here at home.
Do you have a kiln? Yeah,
that we're trying to fix up.
I don't. I have an almost inbuilt hatred of pottery. I could not care about pottery because again, for non-Irish listeners, the leaving cert is like our final year, our graduation year, and we do all our big exams in that year in secondary school. So that year in art, like nearly all the history seemed to be revolved around various different pots from various different times, and then all of our like ceramic projects were building pots. And I wanted to build something different, but it was like, no, you have to make the pot. And then the way of making pots is just dull. It's like watching paint dry. No, I don't like pots. Anyhow, sorry. So that's tools, right? Weapons then, okay?
Yep.
Obviously, given the low population densities, right?
Yeah.
We don't really know about what warfare was like, but given the low population densities, there wouldn't really be that much of a need to have like a weapon, you know?
Yeah.
Like a specific weapon. You like if you need to, you turn your axe into a weapon. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It kills a dude as easily as it kills a tree. Like.
yeah, exactly. So again, like no swords, that sort of thing. The closest thing to weapon then would be the hunting weapons. Would be their weapons, so bow and arrows, things like that. What's interesting and a real big problem for writing fiction is that like there was the idea of kind of organized, coordinated military warfare just wouldn't have existed.
No.
Yeah, and that's and I'm actually going to ask you about this. Like, I've been thinking about this for the past few days. I have no idea how you could because so much of the fiction we consume is centered around war. You know, Star Wars, there's wars in it. Star Trek, even the Great Pacifist, the big great sort of pacifist TV series has wars in it.
Mm-hmm.
Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, everything is centered around war. So I was wondering, how would you deal with this lack of warfare?
Not everything requires war. I don't think. A lot of fiction doesn't.
A lot of genre fiction, though.
A lot of genre fiction does, I guess. But I mean, you can still have mysteries,
like intrigue.
Yeah, you can still have like epic journeys.
Game of Thrones minus the war, the Civil War.
So just the politics and the incest.
Just the politics and the incest. There is evidence, obviously, of like interpersonal violence.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. And so just because there is no organized warfare, so warfare done on behalf of someone else, doesn't mean that this interpersonal violence couldn't have been like catastrophic. You know, like two groups could have met and then there could have been a whole, like a massive battle in a way. So there's no warfare per se, but you could have something that would maybe resemble like warfare, if you get what I'm at, you know?
Yes, I think I do.
Yeah. But also the another thing I wanted to spell, this is me talking, not my friend, this idea of pacifism, this drives me nuts. This idea that everyone before us was somehow more peaceful. I don't think that's the case. Like, I don't think you should paint, because I think, didn't they do this with the Native Americans? They painted this idea that they were just very idyllic and almost like, you know, 70s Zen meditation people who sat around and just, you know, that sort of thing. And they're humans like everyone else. They have the capability of hating and you know, coveting their neighbor's goods, and they'll go to extreme lengths to do it. So, you know, don't paint everyone as being pacifists.
Yeah, I see what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, agree, disagree?
I don't see any reason that they wouldn't be, you know, as I said, they have the full measure of human dignity, but I'm sure they also have the full measure of human avarice and pettiness and...
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Basically just write about humans is the take home here. So the really badass thing I was going to tell you is there's a site in Sweden where it was a shallow lake bed, okay?
Okay.
And what people have done is they had stuck skulls with signs of like interpersonal violence, like they were clearly like murdered or whatever. They had stuck skulls on spikes, right? And shoved them into the lake. So the dead skulls were kind of almost levitating above the water level.
Okay.
And they would they reflect on the water. So you have like this lake of skulls sort of thing. And I'm assuming this is probably to show dominance, perhaps, to ward off people, that sort of thing. If you imagine just like the dark Scandinavian winter, and then there's like this icy blue lake, and then all along it were these skulls on spikes arising out of the water. It's like, oh.
That is very metal.
Very metal. Very cool.
Very metal.
So it's testament to the fact that people didn't have to be pacifists at all. They just didn't have organized warfare, you know?
Yeah, totally.
All right, okay, cool. Let me see. What else we got here? Pick a topic there, Bill.
Okay, there's two here beside each other. Spiritual belief and drugs.
All right, do you want to talk about spiritual belief and drugs? Which one do you want to do first?
Well, I was actually kind of looking at those together.
Oh yeah, they do kind of tie in. Yeah. I'll bounce back and forth.
Because there's a lot of people who speculate that many religions, but I suppose sort of a lot of pre-Christian religions in Europe and a lot of religions in other places are tied to, I suppose, psychoactive experiences. That doesn't make sense, but like a psychedelic use of psychedelics or drug-like substances. It's thought that there's a theory that the Oracle of Delphi may have had something to do with a gas that rose from the ground below the temple that gave the oracles visions.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a lot that, like, the use of... I mean, it's still a thing in a lot of places around the world, like parts of South America. Ayahuasca is used in shamanic ceremonies. That's meant to be...
I've seen some documentaries on that. That's meant to be an intense experience, that.
Yeah, it's from everything I've read about it, it's intense is the word, because it's like a very big experience, and it happens very quickly.
The impression I get, it makes Western drug use seem almost like, cotton wooled. It seems it's just watching images of like reporters go over there and partake in these ceremonies. They look destroyed.
Yeah.
As human beings, they just look at the end of it. They look like they've like gone 100 rounds with McGregor.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. But drugs. Let's talk drugs, and then we'll eventually get to spiritual beliefs. No evidence of drugs.
Okay.
Because realistically, the only way of getting evidence of drugs is to find, some sort of implement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leftover roaches.
Leftover roach. Yes, leftover roaches. And the earliest evidence for beer was like the Bronze Age, so later.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're, this is a culture that is obviously like intimately tied to the land, right? And there's no way they could exist without realizing that, like, if they lick a certain leaf, it makes the mind do great things, or when food rots, it can bring about altered states of consciousness. So you have to assume that there was a thing like drug use.
Yeah, and particularly because psilocybin mushrooms grow quite freely in Ireland, I think.
Yes, of course, yes, yeah, and like they definitely would have known about these things. There's no way there's no way you can set up a scenario where they wouldn't know about these things.
Yeah.
What's interesting is, even if we leave out the drug thing, there's very many practices that involve like bringing about quasi psychedelic states through trances.
Yeah.
So this is the idea of like a shaman or whatever. And I didn't notice at all, but it was I was told that common motifs that people see while in trances are things like spirals, concentric circles, zigzag lines, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting because that's the patterns we see on rock art.
Oh.
And so there's a question, and I in my notes here I have a big, bold, size 20 typeface, a question mark after this. The idea that, is rock art psychedelically informed?
That's pretty cool.
That's very interesting. This is not attested to. This is just speculation. This is, I don't want to put words in the mouth of the archaeologists.
Yeah.
But that's very interesting. And like I've experienced things like this. Every so often you see like something flash up on social media where it's like stare at the image long enough and then look away, and then the room becomes really wavy. Have you ever had that before?
I don't know that specific one, but yeah, optical illusions. Yeah.
Yeah, optical illusions. Basically, if you stare at them too long, they leave a sort of a residue. Not a residue. What's the word?
Residual.
They leave a residual kind of thing in your eye, and when you look away, that's still there, and it blurs the room. And again, I've experienced those wavy, zigzaggy type things. So that I think that seems like a totally legit theory,
Mm-hmm.
But then the question is, who would be allowed to do this? Like, who would be allowed to be in trances, and or who would be allowed to eat the mushrooms in a way?
Yeah.
Like, if you have a question, like, do you set up a scenario where everyone can do this, or do you set up a scenario where only the privileged few can do this, like shamans?
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting thing you can play with.
Definitely.
Here, the thing I want to point out, this evidence for shamanism being connected to rock art is inferred from the San Bushmen of sub-Saharan Africa.
Oh.
Yeah. Apparently they I don't know about this. Apparently they show this shows up in their culture. I was warned by my friend about the pitfalls of using current hunter-gatherers to imply what previous hunter-gatherers were like.
Okay.
So, because then you're using analogy to say what the past is about, and that's something that you have to watch out for.
You have done that like at least twice now.
Yeah, I put it at the start. I am merely a conduit for the information. The conduit is buckled and broken and bent by my stupidity, and I'm doing my best to get things out correctly. But yeah, there will be things I'll say that will be wrong, and I apologize for that.
Have you ever heard of Terence McKenna?
Brother of Ben McKenna?
I don't know who that is.
I'm making up names. I have no idea. Who is it?
Okay, big caveat before I go on. I think he's a kind of interesting dude, but I wouldn't say that I believe anything that he says. He's just they're interesting things to think about.
Okay.
He was, so how to describe him? He was a sort of a counterculture figure from maybe the 70s onwards.
Okay.
And he was big into psychedelics and very sort of kind of mysticisms and spiritual beliefs and stuff. A little bit of the kind of, like you said, the 70s hippie Zen meditation guy, and took ideas from all over the world and like put his own spin on them.
Mm.
But he was big in the promotion of DMT, which is the active ingredient in ayahuasca.
Mm.
But he has a theory which is not taken seriously really by anyone in any kind of academic circles, but it's certainly an interesting one for inspiration for world building.
Right.
The stoned ape theory of human evolution, which is that at some stage the addition of psychedelics to human diets, or that having psychedelic experiences come into the kind of the thing that humans or pre-humans encountered, sparked a kind of change in human consciousness. So that people weren't really conscious in the way we understand them now until that was unlocked by psychedelics.
Oh man, I call utter bull on that.
But it's an interesting idea as well.
No, it is interesting. Yeah, from a world building standpoint, you can obviously, you can watch the History Channel and use it as inspiration for world building, right? But now we're speaking as from a like, is this a legit theory standpoint? But there's no way to falsify that. And then that seems so informed by someone who is very...
There's lots of fields that can't really be falsified that are still taken seriously to some extent. You know?
Okay, so that's all right. Point one. Fair enough. That might be a flawed point. But the second point is, this seems like a worldview informed by someone who was very much of a certain era.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, but you can't let that happen when trying to come up with theories about the world. Like that's the exact same problem.
It can't not happen.
No, but this is the exact same problem that the privileged white men who wrote prehistory did. Like they had ideas that the past was built in their image about what they think. So if the guy is involved in like counterculture and big drug taking, you can't go, oh, because I do these things and because I'm into them and I see these things, therefore others before me must have, and somehow that's valid. That strikes me as just being like self-referential.
But you can't not be influenced by anything. I mean, any frame of reference, you can apply that criticism to it.
Oh yeah, no, but that's very true. And
in general, you know,
you will obviously be influenced by factors, but like the
it seems like a very obvious and injurious example.
Yeah, it seems like his. I don't know about the guy, but it seems like the thing that he defines himself as the most has informed his scientific inquiry. I think, like,
I wouldn't know if I'd say inquiry.
Yeah,
I
no, I
wouldn't
know
know if I'd say it's scientific, but
yeah, that's what I mean. This is not scientific. Like this just seems just stupid. Like it seems ridiculous. Interesting for world building, but that immediately alarm bells are going off my head. Going, I don't know about this, man.
Well, I think the idea is just that psychedelics are like really, really like a big deal, and like in contemporary times, people say that, oh, this has had a profound impact on my mind. And he's like, well, I mean, maybe discovering things that had a profound impact on the mind could have been influential in how we developed. And like, you know, it's taken seriously that religion could be tied to psychedelic experiences and altered states of consciousness. So it's not much further than that.
Yeah. No, that's true. But maybe it's just the point where it's kind of like, we weren't really conscious before, and then we ate the mushroom, and then suddenly consciousness. I mean, like, it sounds like all various different factors of the world, you know, evolution, psychedelic aspects, spiritual aspects, pragmatic aspects, they all inform what it is to be a person, and no one thing is overriding any other thing, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think. And I think he's doing the exact opposite. He's allowing one area he's interested in to override everything else. Anyhow, we're getting sidetracked. Oh, I was going to put this in the green room, but I'm going to top up now just while we're on the topic of people who you find interesting but don't agree with.
Right.
Deepak Chopra.
Oh.
We mentioned him briefly last time, and as it happens, I met up with a friend of mine last week, and we began talking about a fella called Sam Harris, actually.
Yeah.
And then, as a result, we started talking about Deepak Chopra. And I decided to look into some of Deepak Chopra's stuff, because it's very easy to just go, oh, like, everyone thinks he's an idiot, therefore I should think he's an idiot. So I decided to look into some of the stuff and analyze some of his rhetoric and just figure out what he is trying to do, like, regardless of what other people think of him, just what I think he is trying to do. The man is obviously I don't know. I think he's a really complicated and interesting individual, because he's clearly wrong. Okay, like, everything he says is clearly wrong. Like,
right.
There's no two ways about it, because he uses an awful lot of scientific words that have distinct meanings, and those meanings are counter to what he's saying.
Yeah.
So, like, it's very easily, one 10-minute session on Wikipedia can disprove most of what he's saying. But the interesting and complex thing about him is, I don't know, a lot of people, and you yourself refer to him as this, I don't know if he's actually a charlatan. I think he thinks that he has discovered something great and mind-blowing, this idea that quantum mechanics goes into, like, the realms of health and things like that. I think he actually genuinely has looked at it, misinterpreted the evidence, because I can see how it's easy to do so, and then formed a hypothesis. And it just doesn't have the physics backing to be able to, like, understand why he's wrong.
Really?
Yeah. No,
I think it's so beyond coherent that I don't know how anyone could come up with it and think that it's real.
I don't think it's beyond coherent. Like, if you like, you know, and I want to emphasize again for the internet, I think it's rubbish, right? What he's saying is rubbish, right? But if you break down his speech and analyze the words he's using, you can quickly get out why he is trying to use them. He's using them in a very kind of, like, stupid manner and throwing them together. But, like, I understand what his theory is from studying the words he uses. So I think he thinks that he's right. I think he doesn't see himself, like, in his heart of hearts, when he, like, sits down and is a moment at home on his own, I don't think he looks at himself and goes, you're a fraud. You know, but you're a very rich fraud, but you're a fraud. I think he thinks he genuinely has something here. Really? Yeah. And again, I want to emphasize, he's an idiot for that, right? Like, his theories are clearly wrong. Like, there is no way of, like, because you can disprove them. It's not like say a question of God where you can't prove a negative, you know, prove there is no God. You can't prove that. But you can prove that his theories are wrong without a shadow of a doubt. Right. But he thinks he's right. And I think, I don't like him. I don't like the way he's in the public domain. I don't think he should, well, freedom of speech and all, but he really should, like, have a conscience about what he's doing. But I think he's a complicated individual, and I think I think writing him off as a charlatan doesn't allow you to actually involve yourself in some actual interesting, engaging investigation. Okay. Just, I wanted to bring that up because it's been a Deepak Chopra very heavy week for me, and I've been listening to an awful lot of stuff, you know. So, and also Oprah Winfrey, right? Yeah. She needs to take some serious responsibility for that. Like, I'm not an Oprah Winfrey fan at the best of times.
You're more of an Ellen kind of guy.
I love myself some Ellen. But I believe from the brief bit of study I did about this, that she was a huge contributing factor in his growth in popularity. Yeah. Yeah, like, he came on her show and then she, like, gave him various specials and he has segments and that's done huge for him. Like, she as a person working in the public domain, right? Like, she's gotta be sensitive to these things. Like, it's just, I find her almost worse than Deepak, because Deepak thinks he's onto something. She, with her almost limitless supply of resources, should employ a team or something to make absolutely sure that the content that goes on her show is ethical at all times, considering her audience base.
As in her audience base who won't be scientifically informed.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
And you can't expect people to go, oh, there's a guy talking about health. That's good. I'm going to spend the next few weeks really going into what he's saying. They're going to go, okay, he is a doctor. Like, he's an actual genuine doctor, not just like, you know, like a PhD doctor. He's like an MD. So he's like, he's an
endocrinologist or something.
He's an endocrinologist, exactly. So people go, oh, so he's a doctor, and he's been working in the States at a very high profile hospital, and he has this theory that sounds scientific, so therefore he must be correct. And like, shame on him for not having the like ability to be able to reason correctly, but shame on Oprah. Like, fact check stuff before you put it up. Anyhow, I'm sorry. Rant. Okay, back to spiritual beliefs. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, in terms of spiritual beliefs, if I can talk about the Sami people for a second.
Of Finland.
You know you like your Finland.
I do.
You do. How is it going since Google took it over?
I don't know. I haven't been back since.
You haven't been back since, okay. What's called? So the Sami people, right? They have this idea. Again, we're using modern hunter-gatherer societies as analogy here, so you have to be very sensitive and watch out. But they have this idea of animism.
Yeah.
That is, for people, that is the idea that things are animate, but not animated. So, like, they have, like, a life force or whatever, but they're not able to, like, get up and walk around. So, like, a tree can't walk around the place, but it has, like, a being. That sort of thing. And what's really interesting about this is that, like, for them, hunting isn't the one-sided affair that we think it is. So, for, like, if I were to go hunt, right, I would go get a gun license, and I would buy a gun, and I would go out and shoot a deer, and it'd be no competition.
What do you mean there'd be no competition?
I mean, like, the deer doesn't stand a chance.
Well, you have to like find it and stalk it and not spook it away.
Yeah, okay.
It's not easy.
Okay, so it's there's a small challenge on my part to get close to the deer. But once we're kind of pointing the gun at the deer doesn't have a chance.
I don't think it's necessarily a small challenge.
Okay. All right, well, in light of what I'm going to say next, maybe relatively it's quite a small challenge.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Not to say that hunters aren't skilled people. That's not what I'm saying, right? Anyhow, interesting debate about hunting we should have at some time. That would be an interesting one. Anyhow, but that's pin for another day. So for these people, obviously with no guns and things like that, hunting is a very kind of even playing field. Where the human is like on par with the prey, so there's just as much chance of the human dying than the prey dying.
Okay.
You know, because of this, I'm assuming, this is my own speculation, because of this, this is maybe where this like animism came from. Like, everything is kind of level, everything's kind of one, if you know what I mean. So the hunter sees the prey as being a conscious being, and very often the hunter will ask the prey, look, I need to feed my family, I'm really sorry, but I have to take you. Right? And what ensues, and this is very interesting, and especially from a literary sense, what ensues is like this mental, physical, and spiritual battle that doesn't occur in modern hunting.
Right.
And I think that's, and from a narrative point, like, you can think of a great scene set where you go through the whole gamut of emotions with like the mental, the physical, and the spiritual in a sort of hunting scene.
Yeah. It's kind of like human participation in the natural world, in the sort of the natural economy, the ecosystem, in a way that it is no longer the case.
Yeah, exactly. As opposed to like dominating over the ecosystem. So, and then there's like, so if the human doesn't return from the hunt, if the animal takes him, and the group, at large, see an animal emerge from, like, I don't know, the forest or whatever, shortly thereafter, they infer that the man, or the person has become the animal. His spirit has moved on.
Cool.
You know, which I think is very cool. And also very interesting, again, from a genre fiction standpoint, because then it's almost like the idea of werewolves. or weirwoods in Game of Thrones, or skin changers. Like, there's loads of bits, like things like that, the spiritual beliefs that can almost bring in a sense of magic to a setting, but actually still keeping it grounded in quasi real life, which I found very fascinating.
Yeah, I guess from a world building point of view, to me as a reader anyway, specificity is more interesting than being general. Like, if you're just going to say, oh, they're an animist society, and that's that. That doesn't tell you anything. But if you give me specific beliefs that they have, that's cool to read.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing about the various, like, the gamut of emotion there, like how it plays into everything. I think definitely very, very cool to read. Oh yeah, on the thing you said there. I asked my friend as well, just vibing off what you're going on there, about what she would and wouldn't want to see in fiction, based around this time period. One thing would be like just jarring effects, all right? So like hunter-gatherer people with pots riding mammoths would be bad, okay?
Yes.
So yes, it would be bad. So what I kind of got at was a sense that you don't have to be consistent with, say, geography. So you can take various elements from various different groups around the world and combine them into, like, your idea of what you want to present as a hunter-gatherer civilization. But I'm with her on this. You should be, like, sensitive towards time.
Yeah.
So geography,
what people would actually have access to. Be consistent with what's actually available. Let's talk about two topics. I don't know if you have anything to say on these, but two topics that we're both very interested in.
Yes.
What about language, and what about music?
Okay, yes, we have something on this, which is nice. Short answer is we don't know. To both of those things. There's so much of this we don't know, which is actually great for writing fiction because you can just make up a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
but
although it's very hard to know what to make up when you're writing stuff about music. So if only someone handsome had written a world building guide about how to write about music, that would be great. If only.
If only. I know of some music world building guides out there, but they're all shockingly written. They're all terrible. Like, and some of them do this thing where they're quasi instructional, and then they have like a narrative built in. It's just a mess. That's what it is. It's a mess. But anyhow, so language, we have no evidence for language, and we've no evidence for a writing system.
I mean, like, no evidence of what the language was.
Yes.
Like, I mean, they did have language.
They would have 100% would have been able to speak, but we don't know anything about what that was.
Okay.
What is interesting though, it's the way in which archaeologists find out about what language they use, which is very fascinating. I found is that there's a bone in your throat called the hyoid bone.
Okay.
And it's the bone that supports the tongue. So that bone will have certain stresses on it depending on how you use your tongue. Mm-hmm. So they can infer what sort of work the tongue was doing, and then also infer what their speech would have been like.
Broadly, I'm sure.
Yeah, broadly, yeah. But I think that's fascinating. Like, something as intangible as language. And I often find this, when this was mentioned to me, I realized that this is something I experienced the whole time. With my language videos, I'm very often forced to try and produce phonemes that don't exist in English. Mm-hmm. And especially of languages like of the Middle East, they use a lot of things where your tongue is shoved right back in your mouth. And I always find it like quasi sore to do. Like, I always find it stressed and deep in my throat. And then I thought that was interesting because, like, oh, maybe that's, doing that. Maybe it's causing little things on the bone. Who knows? So the little we do know about language is like we can infer a little bit, like, for example, the cave paintings of the previous period, the Paleolithic, could be seen as narrative.
Okay.
So they could be maybe a hieroglyphic system. We that really don't know. It's me speculating. Also, rock art could be a writing system.
Okay.
So I know for again writing fiction, you could use as inspiration hieroglyphics or geometric forms as writing systems. But that's all untested, and we really have no idea. Now music, we don't know.
Good.
No,
Good.
but we can make some assumptions. We haven't found evidence of stringed instruments or drums, right?
Of drums?
Or drums, yeah. I think it's just the case that we just haven't found them. Not that they didn't exist, we just haven't showed up. Again, it's really hard to imagine a culture that has like bits of wood and skins not having drums. You know?
And luckily those are biodegradable, so it's perfectly logical that they might not have survived.
Exactly. So
you know, if you're hitting a big log to make a noise, how does the archaeologist tell that that's not just a tree?
Yeah, exactly. Well, test for stresses.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then like the thing was going to have to be preserved in a certain way, isn't it? Otherwise it's just all going to go away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so like I suppose you could safely say that they're going to have things like stringed instruments and drums and the like. It's just that we haven't found any. The earliest flute is Paleolithic, so there's no reason to think that they didn't have flutes, say. And then obviously there's the voice.
Of course, yeah. Would you say that they probably did have string instruments?
I don't want to say anything, but I mean, like, why would you not have some sort of stringed instrument? Like, what's stopping them given their tech level?
I don't know, it just seems like something that would be kind of more advanced and kind of more difficult to maintain, and I don't know, it just seems harder to get at.
Well, what about if you're building your settlement and you're using like plant fiber rope?
Yeah, and I suppose you do have gut, which would makes
horsehair, things like that as well. You know, I suppose what the important thing to bear in mind is that these aren't like, you're not looking at a violin.
Yeah, of course
Do you know
not.
what I mean?
No, of course not.
So I mean, like, I don't know. I really don't know. I have no idea about this topic, but it wouldn't be jarring for me to have people play string instruments in a fiction, in a work of fiction, you know. But that's all we have. There's a book, I believe it'll be in the show notes, but there's a book called The Singing Neanderthals that my friend told me about. And I believe, because this isn't in my notes, so I'm just trying to remember what you said. I believe it's about things like music and language in prehistory.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be quite an interesting one for people to pick up, and it's worth doing. Also, in terms of studying how music operates in a non-Western paradigm, I would encourage people to check out the musics of Sub-Saharan Africa, because Sub-Saharan Africa is brilliant, and in particular the pygmy groups. Do you remember we had a lecture on this?
No.
Oh, did you not go to this lecture?
I don't know.
Okay, so when Bill and I were in college, there was a lecture, a Jewish, I believe, Israeli man? I believe an Israeli man gave a lecture about...
Yes, I did go to this.
Yes. Yeah, he was horrible.
Yes, he was a very, very, very cantankerous elderly man.
Cantankerous.
I went to that, and part of the reason, obviously I was like, an interesting topic, so I'll go, but he was relevant to my thesis.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, right. What did you do your thesis on?
Ligeti.
Oh, how was he? Oh, yes, yeah, and you talked to him afterwards about something, didn't you?
I can't remember if I did or not. But anyway, he did some work, I think was it on some specific group that Ligeti later worked with as well, or there was some connection that he and Ligeti were both interested in this, or Ligeti read his work on some specific group.
Ligeti, for the people who aren't involved in classical music, Ligeti is?
Oh, Ligeti is a composer. Georges Ligeti, a Hungarian composer from the 20th century. He died about 10 years ago. And my chief bro.
He's your chief bro?
My number one contemporary music dude. Okay. Yeah, he's my favourite.
Ligeti's works are very, very good. But so this professor came and talked to our college about the musics of various sub-Saharan African groups, and that sort of thing is very, very interesting to explore when it comes to music in applying it to a hunter-gatherer sort of setting. I'll try and find some links and stick them in the show notes so you check it out, or read Bill's. I'm sure Bill will make an article about this sometime, because he talks about things on the podcast, and then he gathers all his thoughts into exquisitely executed bits of text that really annoy Edgar and cause him to feel sad.
Once so far. Let's not.
Well, no, you've had other writings as well. It's not like this is your first attempt at writing something.
Well, no, one's based on podcasts so far.
Oh yes. So yeah, that's basically it for music and language. There's not much else we can say. A lot of stuff has to be inferred.
Right.
But it's not hard. And again, study modern groups and see what you can do. I think is the best job. You know. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. So it's been ages. Shall we maybe call it here?
Maybe we should call it there. That's going to be a long one.
It's going to be a long one. All right, I will.
Or for the listeners, this has been a long one.
Yes, it might. I might end up cutting all this, and it turns into a 15-minute thing. Who knows? I doubt it though. All right, listen. I will. Oh, I need to talk to you in the green room for a second. So, can we go to the green room?
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
All right. See you there.
See you there.
So, I need to ask your advice on things, Bill.
Go for it.
We have officially 7 minutes before I need to leave and go to work.
Okay.
Okay. So for the listeners, this might just cut abruptly mid-sentence. All right. Just warning you, because we literally are now on a schedule. So I put out a new video.
Okay.
All right. It was slammed on Reddit.
Okay.
Okay. Like, it was torn apart. And I'm not saying unfairly so. I looked at all the comments, particularly the ones that criticized, and the strength of each individual argument and the multiplicity of all of the comments suggests to me that I was wrong, very wrong.
Okay.
So I just want to ask advice of you and the listeners as to how to proceed here. So I don't like being wrong. No one likes being wrong, but I also don't like being wrong in public and having it stay in public for all of eternity, you know? Right. So I'm wondering here, do you think it might be a case that we should take this video down and re-upload a very similar video except corrected? Or should it stay up and people can take from it the good parts, which and to be fair to myself, like 90% of it is grand. There's one central point, like the interesting point in the middle, that is actually flawed. What would your opinions be on this?
That's hard to say.
Because this is a part of Existential Crisis Month for Edgar. It's just that was a perfect storm of things going wrong, and it manifested itself in a below par video. In my eyes, the views are still of standard things, and the likes are fine, but in my eyes, it was a massive letdown, you know.
Is there a way for you to say within the video that was oh, actually this bit is wrong, but the rest of it's fine, with two annotations or something?
Yeah, you could stick up a big dirty annotation. But
yeah, how do you feel about that?
That
as a solution?
My ego doesn't like it. If I'm perfectly honest, my ego kind of wants, no, I want the stuff up there to be correct. I could stick up an annotation and as a link to say a private video or an unlisted video that clarifies that section. You could do things like that, but that just annotations bother me. I don't like using them because they look unprofessional. First of all. Yeah,
I hate annotations.
Yeah, people like you never turn them on. So that leaves a lot of people that will never see this, and I'm very concerned about this, because this idea of I realize I'm operating in a speculative realm and I'm not doing hard science, but this idea of propagating absolute nonsense, really, and this is the thing that goes back to Oprah and Deepak Chopra. Someone has to take responsibility for it, and I think it might be a case that the video just needs to be taken down and re-upload, and then just suffer the shame of people going, wait a minute, this is the same video, and then I go, yeah, actually the last one was extremely wrong, you know?
Well, it wasn't extremely wrong. There was one bit that wasn't quite right.
Yes. Now imagine you're at a wedding and there's a wonderful multi-tiered wedding cake, and there's icing, a beautiful decorative icing on the cake, and the sponge is gorgeous, and the bride and groom cut into it, and it looks majestic, and you're salivating, you're like, whoa, and then it arrives on your plate and you take a bite into it, you taste the icing and you taste the Victoria sponge, but then the little tiny layer of jam in the middle.
Has a Victoria sponge as a wedding cake?
Oh, I don't know, man. Fruit cake. But anyway, you bite into the icing or whatever the cake is comprised of, but the little sliver of jam in the middle or whatever it is rotten. You wouldn't turn around and go well, that cake was predominantly successful. That was good. I think I'll order that again. Do you know what I mean?
I guess.
I think it's the critical nature of that error. I'll link to the error in the show notes so people can go check it out and maybe they can judge what they think. It's just that that was the interesting point, and it was actually funny enough, it was the bit where I had to come up with my own way of thinking of it. Everything else was drawn from papers, but then I had to extrapolate, and I extrapolated completely wrong. Mm-hmm. What do you think? Take down, leave it up, hope.
It sounds like you are really leaning towards taking it down and redoing it.
Yeah, I'm kind of wanting you almost in a way to pull me back off the edge.
Oh.
Like, that's the reason why I'm bringing it up. Well, I obviously don't want to do it because I've said it. But I was like, I'll bring it up with Bill, and if he goes, Edgar, that's nonsense, then I'll be like, oh, okay.
Like, I don't think it's the end of the world.
No, but you see, but I do think it's the end of the world because you're propagating nonsense.
Then change it. Then take it down.
This is a good point. Well, but why don't you think it's the end of the world? This is the point I'm asking. Like, if it's wrong, and like if you wrote a piece on your website, right? And the central argument, the central point in it was just wrong.
Okay, like, it's not the central point that is the issue in this video. It's a point.
No, it's the set. For the listeners, this is the point that I made about lines of longitude and latitude. No, sorry, this is the point I made about lines of latitude, and how you can how there's formulae to show where they are on any given planet. And I made a point that at above a certain angle, the latitudes flip, and you get this really weird scenario where you have like polar conditions around the equator and equatorial conditions around the poles, right? And like that was the central point. I was like, look at the amazingness that can be done with axial tilt. And that was like the bits about like how seasons work are right, obviously, and like, oh, the Earth is tilted 23.4 degrees. That's all right. But the bit where I was like, let's take it to the next level, wrong. Yeah. I don't know. A large part of this I just need someone to talk to because this has been running in my head constantly. I've had an inner monologue going on in my head, going, that was rubbish, Edgar, that was rubbish, and I just need someone to talk to. Anyway. There you go. Thanks, Bill.
It's okay. I don't think it's the end of the world. But if you are really worried about it, I would cancel doing the video again.
You would cancel doing the video again?
Cancel.
Oh, cancel doing the video again. Okay, right. Okay. Or what about maybe the option of taking down the video and
changing your name and fleeing to Argentina, there to live out the rest of your days in anonymity.
You say this as a jest, but those were things I actually strongly considered. Like, oh, then you know what the worst thing was as well? Like, I'm sure most people don't care. Most people didn't even spot this. But the worst thing was, well, I had an influx of new subscribers. Like, Artifexia has been booming recently. And it's like, now this happens, right?
What has been...
Artifex. I call the land that Artifexian operates in Artifexia.
So there was a blip in the Skype, and I thought you said something about Argentina again.
No, I did not. I'm sure Argentina is booming. I have no idea of their socioeconomic status. I don't know. But like there was an influx of subscribers, and I'm like, oh, the newest video they get to watch is one with a critic, and it was like compounding things built up, and it was just. Not a good time in Artifexia.
What does CGP Grey do when he makes a mistake?
He has, to my knowledge, he has never made one. So he has a hierarchy of errors, right?
Right.
So if he makes spelling mistakes, it goes through, it's fine, who cares? A slip, not great, but not the end of the world. If he mispronounces things, again, who cares? And it keeps going down in severity, and the at the bottom of, or at the top of the list of like heinous things to do, is when you try and make an argument for something or demonstrate something and you are fundamentally flawed, right? He has never, to my knowledge, he has never encountered that, or he hasn't brought a video to release date and then encountered it after release date and then taken it down.
Right.
So I don't really know, but I know that he worries an awful lot about when he makes a point that the central argument just gets destroyed. And I feel like
doesn't he have a video where he says that the official name of our country is the Republic of Ireland?
Yeah, he does, but that's not a central...
Okay.
Go on.
But it's not really the central argument, Edgar. I don't see the mistake in yours as the central argument of your video. It's an important argument. It's like this is a cool point, but everything it's like you all the instructions are valid and you got one of the outcomes wrong. That's all.
Yeah, but
you can follow everything else, and this one outcome that you said is not quite right.
All right, okay. So you don't honestly don't, and do you see it of the level where it should continue to remain in the public domain? Like, is that something that you'd be okay with? If this was your video and you're like, oh, I made this error, but you know what? It's okay to stay out there.
I don't know.
Yeah, okay. I think it's really tricky doing stuff on the internet. It's stressful.
It is.
Actually, no, hold on. Sorry, I take that back. There are many jobs in life where one is stressed. making videos as a hobby is not a stressful thing. I just don't want to be like...
You could be getting shot at.
Yeah, I could be getting shot at. That would be a lot more stressful.
You could be delivering baby cows.
I could be...
That'd be more stressful, I'd say.
It would be slightly more stressful. But there's the one bit of the video making process that is risky is the presenting it to the public and having it open for public scrutiny. Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to voice it. I think I still am leaning heavily on the take it down. I would like to hear from the subreddit what they think. I'd like to hear people's opinions and what they thought of the slips in the video. Did they think they were detrimental or passable? Give me some advice here, because this is the first time this has happened and I'm genuinely torn between what is actually the correct thing to do. Mm-hmm. And that would, I know I say subscribe and things like that, but things like this actually would be genuinely useful to me trying to be a video creator online. So I would really appreciate any sort of help the community could give.
Yeah, what do you guys think? Because, you're an important part of the process.
Yeah, and also, you are not one brain, which is great. You are like a collective group. And there's much more wisdom to be derived from the collective than there is from my wonderfully flawed brain. All right?
Cool.
Okay, I think this is officially our longest episode ever.
I suspect it will be.
What a way to start off season 1.
Our second season 1.
Oh, God. Okay, all right, okay. Can I leave you with another BB-8 sound?
You can. Please do, in fact.
I'm going to finish.
I would enjoy that. Oh, great.
Oh, right. No, sorry, you cut out there again. Oh, man, your voice is really bad.
What are you saying about my rich caramel baritone?
See, I heard baritone.
Rich caramel baritone.
Watch Rich Caramella.
No, never mind.
Okay, all right.